Tonight, I want you to notice how often you have treated tomorrow as though it were already written. You lie down, but inwardly you are standing before an unopened door. Behind that door, you imagine the answer you have not yet received, the conversation that has not yet taken place, the money that has not yet arrived, the decision that has not yet been made, the opportunity that has not yet appeared. You call it tomorrow, yet in imagination you have already furnished it. You have placed fear in one corner, delay in another, uncertainty at the table, and then you wonder why the room feels so familiar. But tomorrow is not yet a room you have entered with the senses. It is first a state you are entering in consciousness. This is the reversal I would have you understand before sleep takes you. Tomorrow does not first become different and then permit you to become different. You become inwardly different, and tomorrow is then encountered from that state. The outer scene may take its own time to arrange itself, but the identity from which you meet it can be chosen now. Perhaps you have been waiting for the visible world to grant you permission. When the money comes, then I will feel secure. When the person speaks, then I will feel loved. When the opportunity opens, then I will feel chosen. When the decision is favorable, then I will breathe easily. But this is the old order. It places cause outside and effect within. I ask you to reverse it. Let security be assumed before the account changes. Let being cherished be accepted before another person speaks. Let usefulness and purpose be felt before the door opens. Let relief become available before the final answer arrives. You are not pretending that the outer fact has already changed. You are selecting the state from which the outer fact will be met. What you call the reality you want is, before anything else, a state of consciousness. It is a way of being, a way of receiving, a way of interpreting, a way of moving through the world without asking each appearance to tell you who you are. There is no violence required in this reversal. You do not have to wrestle tomorrow into submission. You only cease granting the present appearance authority over the state you may occupy tonight. Tonight you will not drag that reality toward yourself. You will enter it. And before we go farther, take one small outward action that reflects this inward decision. Subscribe to this channel, not as a charm, not as a bargain with God, and not as though an outer gesture could perform the inward work for you. Let it be a quiet sign that you intend to return to these ideas until conscious assumption becomes more natural than fearful prediction, and until the night becomes an hour in which you remember your creative place rather than surrendering it to appearances. Subscribe now, and let that simple act mark the decision to stop treating your present circumstances as the final authority upon your future. Each time you return not merely to words, but to the remembrance that consciousness can choose its dwelling place. Then leave even this action behind. The true movement is inward, and no outward gesture can substitute for the state you accept as your own. Now consider this carefully. What if the tomorrow you desire is not something you must reach, but a state you can occupy before morning arrives? Do not answer quickly. Let the question enter more deeply than argument. You have imagined your desired life as though it were standing at a great distance from you. Somewhere ahead there is financial ease. Somewhere ahead there is the relationship in which you feel cherished. Somewhere ahead there is meaningful work, recognition, health of mind, peace in the household, freedom from an old burden. Somewhere ahead, you imagine, there is another version of you who finally knows how it feels to live without the question that troubles you tonight. And because you place that state in the distance, you turn time into a wall. You say, I am here, and what I desire is there. Then the mind begins measuring the distance. How long? Through what means? Who must change? Which door must open? What must happen first? What if I fail before I arrive? What if the road is longer than I can bear? The desired reality, which began as a promise of relief, becomes another source of strain because you have placed yourself outside it. Tonight I ask you to remove the distance psychologically, not the distance of the calendar, the distance of identity. You may not possess the visible evidence tonight. The letter may not have arrived. The person may not yet have spoken. The position may not yet have been offered. The circumstances may still bear the marks of an older state. but the state itself is not locked inside tomorrow. Relief is not imprisoned inside a future event. Dignity is not imprisoned inside another person's approval. Security is not imprisoned inside one sum of money. Belonging is not imprisoned inside one invitation. Guidance is not imprisoned inside one road. These are states of consciousness, and consciousness is present now. This does not mean that you must deny your desire for visible change. I would never ask you to pretend that form is meaningless. If you desire a home, you desire a home. If you desire reconciliation, you desire reconciliation. If you desire profitable work, you desire profitable work. If you desire an answer, you desire an answer. But beneath each visible form is a state that gives the form its meaning. Ask yourself quietly, if the desired thing were already part of my ordinary life, what would no longer be true about me? Would you still be the one waiting for permission? Would you still be the one expecting rejection? Would you still be the one looking upon tomorrow as an adversary? Would you still carry every uncertainty in the body as though it were a sentence? Perhaps not. Then the reality you seek is already revealing its first doorway. The doorway is the self you would be if the matter was settled. This self does not have to wait until morning to exist. You can enter that identity tonight. You do not manufacture a false person. You cease insisting that the present state is the only self available. This is one of the great errors of man. He looks upon his present circumstances and says, "This is reality." Then he looks upon imagination and says, "This is merely thought." But which came first, in his experience, the circumstance or the state through which he continually interpreted and inhabited life? A circumstance appears, and immediately a state gives it meaning. Two people may receive the same delay. One enters defeat, another remains open. Two may hear the same uncertain answer. One becomes rejected in consciousness. Another says, "The matter is unfinished." Two may see the same financial figure. One carries it as doom. Another sees a present condition requiring wise action, but refuses to make it the name of the future. The circumstance alone does not contain the whole experience. The state meets it, and the state can be selected. This is why I say consciousness is the only reality. I do not mean that the visible world should be ignored. I mean that you never encounter the visible world apart from consciousness. You are always meeting it as someone. Who is that someone tonight? The one who fears tomorrow. The one waiting for another person to decide her worth. The one who believes one closed door has exhausted all possibilities? The one who assumes the present arrangement has already written the future? Or can you become, even for a few moments before sleep, the one for whom the essential end has been accepted? Notice that I say the essential end. You do not need to know the machinery. You do not need to know the sequence. You do not need to imagine every person moving into position. You need only know what state would be natural if the thing were done. Perhaps the state is relief. There is great power in relief because relief implies that a burden has ended. Perhaps it is being chosen, not chosen by one particular mouth as though your whole identity lived there, but the deeper feeling that you are wanted, valued, and naturally included in life. Perhaps it is support. Not one channel desperately forced to remain open, but the feeling that life contains means, usefulness, and provision beyond what the present eye can count. Perhaps it is freedom, the sense that the old question no longer determines every morning. Perhaps it is simply peace. Do not underestimate peace. If the reality you desire were already established, you might not spend all day thinking about it. This is where many misunderstand the wish fulfilled. They imagine that fulfillment must feel like continuous excitement. They believe they must produce a great emotional storm and keep it alive until the outer world changes. But what you possess naturally often becomes quiet. A man does not spend every hour celebrating the fact that his own name belongs to him. A woman who feels secure in a relationship does not wake each morning astonished that she is loved. A person whose work has become established does not spend each moment proving inwardly that the work exists. Possession becomes ordinary. Therefore, the reality you want may first be entered through an ordinary sense of completion. The question is no longer shouting. The matter is no longer being carried in every room. The mind does not need to inspect the future continually. This ordinariness is not weakness, it is naturalness. Tonight seek naturalness rather than intensity. What if, instead of trying to feel ecstasy, you allowed yourself to feel that nothing more had to be solved in this hour? What if the first taste of your desired reality was simply the end of internal pursuit? You have chased the answer long enough in imagination. Let the chase stop. You may still want the answer, but stop running toward it. There is a difference between desire and pursuit. Desire can remain while the state changes. You may desire the outer manifestation and still rest inwardly, as though its essence belongs to you. This is living from the end, not pretending that the middle has vanished, not telling yourself that every fact is already physically different, but refusing to let the middle decide the identity from which you live. Suppose a woman waits for a letter concerning an opportunity that matters deeply to her. Each night she imagines the letter arriving, but she imagines it from the state of one who desperately needs the letter to rescue her from feeling overlooked. Even her pleasant scene contains waiting. She sees the desired paper, but psychologically she remains outside the door. Now suppose she changes the imaginal act. Instead of dramatizing the arrival, she enters a simple evening after the matter has been settled. She sees herself putting away the papers because they no longer need attention. She hears a friend say, "You seem so relieved." She answers, "Yes, everything has found its proper place." The scene is quiet, but it carries her beyond the question. She is no longer waiting for the opportunity. She is inhabiting the identity implied by having received favorable movement. This is the difference. You do not always need to imagine the moment something arrives. Imagine the self for whom arrival is old news. The reality you want may be easiest to enter after the drama is over. Ask, what would I be doing if I no longer had to ask whether this could happen? Perhaps you would be sleeping. There is something almost humorous in this. You stay awake trying to create a reality in which you imagine you would finally be able to rest. Then why not let rest become part of the assumption now? If the desired reality means peace, allow peace to begin before proof. If it means security, stop using vigilance as the price of security. If it means being loved, stop abandoning yourself during the interval. If it means support, stop assuming that worry is a form of financial labor. You are not earning the state through suffering. You are selecting it. Tomorrow does not first have to become favorable before you are allowed to meet it favorably. You can enter favorable relation tonight. This is not a promise that every event tomorrow will flatter you. Life may still contain a difficult conversation. A delay may remain. A practical obligation may require attention. Someone may be in a mood you did not choose. The state does not make you incapable of seeing these things. It prevents them from becoming your God. One event cannot command the whole identity, unless consciousness grants it that rank. Tomorrow may say, "Here is an unanswered question." You may remain supported. Tomorrow may say, "Here is a delay." You may remain guided. Tomorrow may say, "Another person is uncertain." You may remain cherished. Tomorrow may say, "The present figure has not yet changed." You may remain open to provision while taking wise action. The day speaks. The state answers. This is what I mean when I say tomorrow is encountered from the state chosen tonight. You do not command tomorrow by shouting at it. You command the state from which tomorrow receives meaning. And that state alters more than your private mood. It alters what you notice, what you tolerate, what you say, what you refuse, what you recognize, which impulse you follow, which opportunity you dismiss or receive, which conversation you begin, which old pattern you cease completing. The change of state becomes movement. Movement becomes incident. Incident joins incident. And a bridge forms that you could not have designed by conscious calculation. This is why you need not force tomorrow. A state contains tendencies. The one who feels guided notices another road. The one who feels worthy behaves differently in the room. The one who feels supported is more capable of seeing means where panic once saw only threat. The one who feels cherished does not interpret every silence as a command to pursue. From the outside, these may look like small changes, But a life is often redirected through small changes, repeated from another identity. Do not despise the first inward shift because it does not look like the final miracle. The first evidence of another reality may be that the old one no longer convinces you completely. Yesterday, one silence meant rejection. Tonight, you notice that silence can remain silent. Yesterday, one figure meant ruin. Tonight, it becomes one present figure. Yesterday, one closed road meant there was no way. Tonight, you can say, I do not yet see the way. That small word, yet, creates room without demanding fantasy. You have not denied anything. You have ceased turning what is present into all that is possible. This is the beginning of stepping into another reality, not disappearing from the present world, changing your psychological relation to it. The senses may report the old arrangement. You answer from a new residence. Think of a man standing at a railway station. He sees one train depart without him and concludes that travel itself has ended. He sits down and mourns the road he did not take. But the station contains other departures, other routes, other times. His error is not that he preferred the first train. His error is that he made one departure the whole concept of movement. So you have done with circumstances. One person became all love. One job became all purpose. One sum became all support. One decision became all possibility. One path became all guidance. Then fear arose because the entire future appeared to depend upon one fragile form. Tonight, return the essence to consciousness. You may prefer the form, but do not imprison the state inside it. Say inwardly, I know what I desire, but I will not reduce the whole of fulfillment to what I can presently imagine as the only means. This is freedom. The reality you want can then become larger than one door. Love becomes a state from which relationships are experienced. Support becomes a state from which means are recognized. Purpose becomes a state from which useful action flows. Guidance becomes a state that can survive a turn. Peace becomes a state that does not wait for every human being to behave perfectly. Now you have something you can enter tonight. You cannot physically enter every external condition before morning, but you can enter the identity. You can rest as the one who is no longer psychologically begging the future. Perhaps you say, I do not know how to feel that identity. Then begin with what it no longer does. The fulfilled self no longer rehearses the feared conversation. Stop rehearsing. The supported self no longer makes one number the whole future. Let the number remain on the page. The cherished self no longer asks another person's silence to define worth. Leave the silence uninterpreted. The guided self no longer demands the entire road before taking the next step. Let the unseen remain unseen. Often the state is entered by subtraction before it is entered by addition. You stop doing what belongs to absence. You stop pleading. You stop inspecting. You stop forecasting. You stop mentally standing at the door. And in the quiet left behind, another identity begins to feel possible. You may not yet say with full naturalness, everything I desire is mine. That is all right. Say something consciousness can receive. I do not have to predict tomorrow from this moment. Or, the present appearance is not the only reality available to me. Or, I can meet tomorrow from another state. These are not lesser assumptions if they move you out of inevitability. A prison door need only open enough for you to leave. You do not need to decorate the cell before stepping out. Let the future become wider. What you presently see is one arrangement. What you presently feel is one state. What you presently expect is one habit of imagination. None is required to become eternal. You may select again. This is the great dignity of consciousness. It can observe itself occupying one state and move toward another. You may have spent years feeling overlooked and still begin to occupy recognition. You may have known financial fear and still begin to occupy support. You may have lived through rejection and still begin to occupy being cherished. You may have made mistakes and still begin to occupy wisdom. The past may explain why the old state became familiar. It does not make the old state sacred. Familiarity is not destiny. What has been practiced can feel natural without being final. Tonight you are practicing another home. Do not worry if it feels unfamiliar. A new room feels strange the first night. You notice its sounds. You do not yet know where everything belongs, but you can still sleep there. So with a new state, you may not know every thought the supported self would think. You may not know exactly how the cherished self would behave in every circumstance. You do not need to. Choose one simple quality of the new room. Relief. That may be enough for tonight. Or spaciousness. The sense that not everything is closing around you. Or quiet expectation. Not excitement, but openness to favorable movement. Rest there. You are not asked to become another human being in one instant. You are asked to stop treating the present version of yourself as the only version consciousness can occupy. What if the tomorrow you desire is not something you must reach, but a state you can occupy before morning arrives? Return to that question. What if the distance is not as great as thought has made it? The money may still require a bridge. The relationship may still require a bridge. The work may still require a bridge. The answer may still require a bridge. But the state does not require a bridge. The state is entered now. The bridge follows the state into form. This is why your work tonight is not to build tomorrow. It is to choose the inhabitant who will enter it. Who enters tomorrow. Not the one condemned by today. Not the one asking one event for permission to exist differently. Not the one whose entire future is already filled with the furniture of fear. Let that old inhabitant rest. She has carried enough. Choose another, perhaps only slightly different. The one who leaves room for life. The one who does not assume every unknown is hostile. The one who can sleep before the answer. The one who understands that an unseen bridge is still a bridge. The one who does not need every fact to change before beginning to change inwardly. Let this self lie where you lie. No performance, no posture of greatness, only a quieter relation to what has not yet appeared. The future is not here to accuse you. Tomorrow is not a tribunal. Morning is not coming to reveal whether you are worthy. It is another field in which the state will meet experience. Let the state be chosen before the field arrives. Perhaps tomorrow will look different immediately. Perhaps it will not. Do not make speed the law. The importance of tonight is not that every outer detail must transform by sunrise. The importance is that you no longer send the same inner inhabitant into the same world and then wonder why every room looks familiar. Change the inhabitant. The room begins to change in meaning. The choices change. The responses change. The bridge changes. And the visible arrangement has room to follow. You may sleep before seeing any of this. Indeed, you should not remain awake to inspect the process. The seed is not improved by being watched. The state is not strengthened by mental strain. Select, enter, rest. Perhaps your whole practice tonight becomes 3 quiet movements. Select the state, enter its simplest implication. Rest before asking for proof. Select, enter, rest. No need to repeat these words mechanically. Understand them. You select being supported. You enter the implication by ceasing to carry every means. You rest. You select being cherished. You enter the implication by no longer using silence against yourself. You rest. You select guidance. You enter the implication by allowing the road to remain unseen. You rest. You select fulfillment. You enter the implication by allowing the question to become quieter. You rest. This is stepping into another reality, in the only place where the first step can truly occur, consciousness. The outer world will have its part. People will move. Circumstances will unfold. Natural actions will be taken. Some things may surprise you. But tonight, you need not arrange them. The reality you want is not a package hidden at the end of tomorrow. It is first the state from which tomorrow is lived. And that state does not need to wait for dawn. You are here now. Awareness is here now. Imagination is here now. The ability to cease one conclusion and accept another is here now. Therefore, do not ask the present appearance to grant you permission. Do not look at the silence and ask whether you may feel cherished. Do not look at the figure and ask whether you may feel supported. Do not look at the closed road and ask whether you may feel guided. Do not look at the delay and ask whether fulfillment is still allowed. Appearances report. They do not legislate consciousness. Tonight, stop treating what is visible as though it were the full measure of what is possible. It is one appearance, one arrangement, one moment in a sequence still moving. The present is not the only reality available to consciousness. Do not fight it. Do not deny it. Simply stop giving it the authority to be the only place you are permitted to live. The life you want is not waiting at the end of tomorrow. Its first doorway is here. And tonight, before morning arrives, you may enter. And tonight, before morning arrives, you may enter. Understand this carefully. You are always entering one state or another. Consciousness does not remain empty while you wait for life to happen. Even when you believe you are merely thinking, merely wondering, merely preparing yourself for what might come, you are already occupying something. Expectation is not passive. Expectation is an entrance. If you expect rejection tomorrow, you are not waiting for rejection. You have entered the state of rejection tonight. If you expect a difficult financial day, you are not simply considering money. You have entered insufficiency before the account has changed. If you imagine being misunderstood, overlooked, dismissed, or disappointed, the event may still belong to tomorrow, but the state has already become present. This is the distinction I want you to carry deeply. The event may belong to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. The conversation may occur tomorrow, but the fear of it is happening now. The letter may arrive tomorrow, but the disappointment you imagine is being experienced now. The decision may not yet be made, but the identity of the one expecting refusal can already be occupied. You have done this so naturally that you have rarely called it imagination. You have called it preparation. You have called it being realistic. You have called it knowing how things usually go. But often you were simply entering a state in advance and then allowing that state to color everything you saw. This is anticipation. Anticipation is imagination extended forward and emotionally inhabited before the visible event occurs. You have practiced this all your life. A child hears that a stern teacher wishes to speak with him the next morning. The conversation has not occurred, yet before sleep he has already entered the classroom a dozen times. He has heard the voice, felt the shame, imagined punishment, and suffered the event repeatedly before the teacher has said another word. The body lies in bed. Consciousness sits in the classroom, which is real to him in that hour, the state he occupies. Or imagine a woman awaiting an important answer. Nothing new has happened since the afternoon. The room is quiet. The letter has not arrived. No messenger has knocked. Yet she sees the refusal in imagination, then imagines what she will say afterward, then what others will think, then what her life will look like months later. In 10 minutes she has traveled through a future that has no physical existence. And still, the body responds as though she had received the answer. Her breath changes, her chest tightens, her sleep disappears. She says, I am worried about tomorrow, but psychologically, she has already lived tomorrow, not tomorrow itself. Her assumption about tomorrow. There is a great difference. You have mistaken imagined occupation for information. You believe you know how something will feel because you have rehearsed one possibility until it seems familiar. Familiarity then disguises itself as certainty. You say, I know how this will end. But perhaps what you know is only the state you have repeated. The mind predicts what it has practiced. This is why consciousness is never truly neutral. Every inner conversation places you somewhere. Every repeated expectation gives you a psychological address. Every conclusion becomes a room. When you say, people always leave me, you enter one room. When you say, I am always the one who must struggle, you enter another. When you say, nothing ever happens easily for me, you enter another. When you say, I am supported even while I cannot see the means, you enter another. When you say, I am naturally understood and respected, you enter another. When you say, life can still surprise me favorably, you enter another. You are always somewhere in consciousness. The question is not whether you are imagining. The question is where you are living inwardly. You have believed that imagination begins only when you close the eyes and deliberately construct a scene. No. Deliberate imaginal work is one use of imagination. But imagination has been active all day in your assumptions, interpretations, remembered conversations, and anticipations. You imagine without announcing that you are imagining. You see a person hesitate and imagine what the hesitation means. You receive no answer and imagine why no answer has come. You see a financial figure and imagine what it predicts. You hear a tone of voice and imagine the intention behind it. You see one closed door and imagine the roads beyond it closing as well. Then you respond emotionally not only to what occurred, but to everything imagination added. This is why two people can stand before the same circumstance and experience different worlds. One person hears, "We have not decided yet," and lives in rejection. Another hears the same sentence and lives in incompletion. The words are identical. The state is different. One person sees a delay and says, "This always happens to me." Another says, "The matter is still moving." The delay is identical. The state is different. One person sees a small financial setback and enters catastrophe. Another sees a practical problem requiring attention. The number may be identical. The inner reality is different. Consciousness does not wait for events to tell it what state to occupy. It selects, often unconsciously, and then the selected state becomes the lens through which the event is interpreted. This is why I tell you that consciousness is the only reality. Not because chairs, letters, people, accounts, roads, and houses are imaginary in the trivial sense, but because you never experience any of them without a state. The object is present. The state determines what world that object belongs to. A closed door can belong to defeat, or to redirection. Silence can belong to abandonment, or to an unfinished interval. A change of plan can belong to failure, or to a bridge still arranging itself. You may not yet know which meaning will prove most faithful to the completed sequence. Therefore, do not rush to place the darkest meaning inside the event and call it truth. You are choosing a state when you do this. Become conscious of the choosing. You have been stepping into realities long before you learned to call the process assumption. Every time you said, "I just know something will go wrong," you stepped into a state. Every time you said, "No one notices me," you stepped into a state. Every time you entered a room expecting to be dismissed, you arrived inwardly before the body entered. Every time you approached money expecting pain, you entered scarcity before opening the envelope. Every time you met love, expecting departure, you entered abandonment before the other person had chosen anything. You were not only reacting to reality, you were bringing a reality with you. This is not said to burden you with blame. I am not asking you to search your history and accuse yourself of every difficulty. That would merely be another unwanted state. I am showing you that the faculty has always been present, which means it can now become conscious. What has been unconscious habit may become deliberate selection. Do not waste the discovery on guilt. Use it for freedom. You do not need to say, "I created everything badly." Say instead, "I now see that I have been entering states without knowing it, and if I can enter unconsciously, I can enter consciously." This is the beginning of mastery. A person who realizes he has been walking in his sleep does not need to curse every road already taken. He wakes. Then he chooses where to walk. Wake inwardly now. Notice where expectation has carried you. Perhaps tomorrow contains a conversation. When you think of it, where do you go? Do you enter the room as one already misunderstood? Do you hear yourself defending, explaining, pleading? Then the conversation has become an entrance into the state of not being understood. You may still prepare practically. You may know what you wish to say, but preparation need not contain defeat. Imagine entering as one who is calm, clear, and worthy of being heard. You do not command the other person's response. You select the state from which you arrive. The event belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Perhaps tomorrow contains money, a payment, a bill, a decision, an account. Where do you go inwardly when you think of it? Do you enter the state of not enough? Do you feel tomorrow squeezing around you before anything new has happened? Then scarcity is being occupied now. You need not deny the number. You need not pretend a bill does not exist, but you can separate the visible fact from the state. The number belongs to paper. The state belongs to consciousness. One can say, this matter requires attention, while remaining inwardly capable, supported, and open to means. Another can say, this is the beginning of disaster, and enter disaster before any future fact has appeared. The account did not choose the state. Consciousness did. Perhaps tomorrow contains love. A person may speak, or remain silent. A meeting may occur, or not occur. Where do you enter when you think of it? Do you immediately become the one waiting to be chosen? Do you stand inwardly outside another heart begging for admission? Then the event belongs to tomorrow, but waiting has become your state now. Instead, ask, who am I before they speak? Can I occupy being cherished before one person supplies proof? Can I allow love to be larger than one response? Can I meet tomorrow as one whose worth does not need to be created by another person's mood? This does not force affection. It changes the one who receives the event. Perhaps tomorrow contains work or opportunity. You imagine the interview, the meeting, the decision, the letter, the closed office door. Do you enter as one attempting to persuade everyone that you deserve a place? Or as one who already experiences herself as useful, capable, and naturally well placed? The event belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Once you understand this, tomorrow becomes less frightening, because you see that you do not have to wait for the day to begin before changing your position within it. You have been entering tomorrow every night. You simply did not know that you were doing so. You thought you were worrying. You were rehearsing a state. You thought you were expecting. You were inhabiting a state. You thought you were preparing for disappointment. You were practicing the identity that disappointment would confirm. Now preparation can become conscious, not preparation of every event, preparation of being. Who will meet tomorrow? This question is more powerful than asking what tomorrow contains, for you do not know every event, but you can choose the state that will meet them. Will the one who meets tomorrow be already tired from imaginary battles? Or one who has left enough space for life to speak for itself? Will she arrive carrying yesterday's rejection, or with the possibility that a new response can occur? Will she approach money as one condemned by a figure, or as one capable of wise action and unexpected support? Will she approach love as a beggar, or as one who can receive affection without surrendering identity? Do not answer with grand declarations if they feel artificial. Begin with small shifts of residence. You may not yet feel fully supported. Can you stop occupying total helplessness? You may not yet feel completely cherished. Can you stop assuming abandonment? You may not yet feel absolutely successful. Can you stop rehearsing failure? The removal of one old conclusion is already an entrance into another state. There is a doorway between certainty of the unwanted and openness to another possibility. Walk through it. You do not need to leap immediately into ecstasy. Perhaps the new state begins as, I do not know that tomorrow will reject me. This is different from, tomorrow will reject me. Perhaps it begins as, I do not know that this financial concern will become catastrophe. This is different from living in catastrophe. Perhaps, I do not know that this silence means I am forgotten. This is different from abandonment. You have loosened the old state. Now consciousness has room. From that room, you may go farther. Perhaps tomorrow can meet me with more favor than I presently see. Perhaps the answer may be kinder than fear predicts. Perhaps there are means not yet visible. Perhaps another road exists. Do not despise perhaps if it frees you from false certainty. Fear loves absolute language. Always, never, no one, nothing, impossible. It closes the field. A softer assumption can open the door. Then, as the new state becomes more natural, perhaps gives way to quiet acceptance. I am supported. I am guided. I am valued. I am available to favorable movement. The words become stronger because the state beneath them has become less divided. This is very different from forcing oneself to shout certainty over fear. I do not ask you to drown the old voice. I ask you to stop treating it as prophecy. The old voice says, this will go badly. You may answer, that is one state speaking, not truth itself. The old voice says, no one will choose me. That is one state speaking. The old voice says, I never have enough. That is one state speaking. The voice is not God. The state is not eternal. You can hear it without entering it fully. This is a skill. A thought may appear at the door without becoming the room you live in. You can say, I know this old house. I do not need to stay here tonight. Then turn. Where do you turn? Toward the state implied by the end, not toward a forced picture, toward identity. Suppose the desired tomorrow contains harmony. The state is not merely they apologize. The state may be mutual respect, peace, and emotional safety. Enter that. Suppose the desired tomorrow contains money. The state is not merely this payment arrives. The state may be support, solvency, usefulness, ease, and wise stewardship. Enter that. Suppose the desired tomorrow contains success. The state is not merely they choose me. The state may be belonging, competence, contribution, and recognition. Enter that. Suppose the desired tomorrow contains health of mind and body. The state may be rest, care, patience, wise action, and the absence of constant fear. Enter what can honestly be entered without turning imagination into a promise that no human condition will require practical attention. The state organizes your relation to life. This is where your power begins. The event may still surprise you. The state gives you a place from which to receive the surprise. Many people say they want a new reality, but what they truly want is a new event while preserving the old identity. They want love while remaining the one who expects abandonment. They want abundance while remaining the one who interprets every expense as danger. They want recognition while remaining the one who believes everyone overlooks them. They want peace while remaining inwardly devoted to conflict. Then, even when a favorable event appears, the old state consumes it. Love appears, and they search for signs of departure. Money arrives, and they immediately fear its loss. Recognition appears, and they assume it was accidental. A peaceful period begins, and they wait for the next disturbance. The event changed. The state remained. Therefore, the desired event could not become a new reality. A reality is not one event. It is a state made habitual enough that events are received from it. This is why tonight matters. Sleep can become a threshold between one residence and another. You do not need to drag the whole desired life through the threshold. Bring the identity. The bridge can bring the form. Imagine a traveler moving into a new country. He cannot carry every building, road, and future meeting with him. He carries what identifies him, what belongs to his person, and then enters the new land where events unfold. So tonight, do not attempt to carry every scene. Carry the state. Who are you in the desired reality? Not what do you own. Not who is standing beside you. Not what exact words appear upon a letter. Who are you? Perhaps you are relaxed where you are now tense. Perhaps you are received where you now feel you must prove yourself. Perhaps you are secure where you now feel exposed. Perhaps you are free where you now feel psychologically trapped. Perhaps you are simply no longer asking the same question. This last point is important. Sometimes the clearest evidence of a state is what the person no longer thinks about. When a matter is settled, you stop visiting it mentally. When love feels secure, you stop asking whether you are loved every hour. When a financial matter is handled, you stop rehearsing its danger. When an answer has become certain, you stop searching for signs. The desired reality may therefore feel quieter than your present one. Fear is noisy. Possession is often quiet. You may be attempting to enter a new reality through tremendous emotion when the doorway is actually a cessation. What would stop if this was settled? Perhaps the inner argument. Let it stop for a moment. What would stop if you felt supported? Perhaps the calculation of every possible disaster. Let it stop for a moment. What would stop if you knew yourself cherished? Perhaps the imaginary pursuit. Let it stop for a moment. What would stop if you felt guided? Perhaps the demand to see the entire road. Let it stop for a moment. The stopping is an entrance. You are entering another state through the absence of an old behavior. This is why I say consciousness is never neutral. Even not doing something can reveal a state. A person who no longer pleads inwardly has entered greater dignity. A person who no longer interprets every silence has entered greater security. A person who no longer turns one figure into a lifetime has entered greater proportion. A person who no longer demands the entire road has entered greater trust. These states may feel gentle, but gentleness does not make them weak. A compass does not shout, it gives direction. Let your chosen state become a compass. Tomorrow may contain many turns. You do not need to know them tonight. You need direction. The frightened mind wants a map of every street. The assumed state needs only the destination and enough trust to take the next visible step. You may say, I am moving from rejection toward being cherished, from scarcity toward support, from confusion toward guidance, from self-doubt toward dignity. This is enough direction for one night. Do not turn the state into another duty. You are not required to monitor yourself every second. If you drift back into the old reality, notice, return. You have done this physically all your life. If you enter the wrong room, you leave it. You do not sit upon the floor and condemn yourself for opening the wrong door. You turn the handle and return. Do the same inwardly. You enter tomorrow's argument. Notice, return to the bed. You enter tomorrow's financial fear. Notice, return to support. You enter another person's imagined rejection. Notice, return to being. No punishment. No belief that one wrong entrance ruined the night. States are available. Choose again. The freedom to choose again is more important than the fantasy of never wandering. A traveler who knows the road can correct course. A traveler who believes one wrong turn has ended the journey may remain lost through despair. Do not despair over thought. Correct direction. This is persistence in its gentlest form. You are not trying to freeze consciousness. You are teaching it where home is. At first, the old state may feel like home, because you know every room within it. You know how rejection thinks. You know how scarcity breathes. You know how anxiety interprets silence. You know how self-doubt speaks after a mistake. The new state may feel less familiar. That does not make it less available. A new house can be entered before it feels like home. At first you notice its unfamiliar quiet. Then you begin to know where the light falls in the morning. You learn which chair feels comfortable. You stop reaching for doors that are no longer there. Gradually, residence becomes natural. So with the state. At first you deliberately remember, I do not have to assume rejection. Then one day rejection is no longer the automatic interpretation. At first you remind yourself, one figure is not all supply. Then the body stops responding to every number as danger. At first you say, silence is not a verdict. Then silence loses some of its old authority. The new state becomes familiar through return, not through pressure, not through perfection, through residence. Tonight gives you a beautiful opportunity because the outer world is gradually becoming less demanding. During the day, every sound asks for attention. Every duty claims a part of you. Every face supplies evidence. Every circumstance tempts interpretation. But as sleep approaches, these demands become quieter. You are given an interval in which the senses no longer need to lead. Use this interval gently. Do not make sleep another battlefield. You are not fighting the old reality. You are noticing which reality you have been entering and choosing another place to rest. Perhaps the room is dark. Perhaps the house is still. Let the outer quiet become a symbol of inner possibility. The day has stopped supplying new evidence. Why continue producing old evidence inwardly? Nothing new has happened in the last minute. Yet the mind can create another hour of suffering by extending one assumption. Stop extending. Let the event remain tomorrow. Let the state become now. The event may belong to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Say this slowly within. The conversation belongs to tomorrow. Calm belongs to now. The answer belongs to tomorrow. Support belongs to now. The meeting belongs to tomorrow. Dignity belongs to now. The result belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. This is not a trick. It is an ordering of time and consciousness. You have allowed events not yet present to steal states available now. You said, I cannot have peace because the answer has not come. But peace is not the answer itself. You said, I cannot feel supported because I do not know the means. But support is a state. not one visible channel. You said, I cannot feel cherished because someone remains silent. But being cherished is an identity larger than one person's present action. You gave tomorrow ownership of today's consciousness. Take it back. Tomorrow may carry the event. You retain the state. This is how you stop living perpetually one day behind fulfillment. You have always postponed the state, after the letter, after the payment, after the apology, after the opportunity, after the change, always after, and then another condition appears, so the state is postponed again. Tonight, end the postponement, not by claiming every outer condition is already complete, by refusing to postpone being. Peace now, dignity now, openness now, support now, in the measure you can accept, being cherished now, in the manner you treat yourself and interpret the unknown. Guidance now, even without the whole road. The desired state may begin in very small forms. Perhaps support is simply allowing yourself to sleep. Perhaps dignity is not replaying an insult. Perhaps being cherished is not making yourself beg in imagination. Perhaps guidance is allowing tomorrow to remain partly unknown. These are real entrances. Do not wait for a dramatic sensation. A door can open silently. You may already have moved into another reality before the body knows how to name the shift. One moment the future feels closed. Then it feels open. One moment the silence means rejection. Then it means nothing definite. One moment the account contains the whole future. Then it becomes one matter. One moment the road is impossible. Then it is simply unseen. These changes may appear subtle, but a state is being changed at the level of meaning. Meaning governs experience more deeply than spectacle. The world may not have changed visibly in that second, yet you are no longer standing in the same world psychologically. This is the first step. And from this first step, another becomes possible. You may wake tomorrow and see the same room. Do not conclude that nothing changed. Which self opened her eyes? That is the first question. Perhaps the old concern returns, but it no longer owns the whole morning. Perhaps you remember the unanswered matter, but there is a moment before fear where choice appears. Perhaps you see the same account, but catastrophe does not enter as quickly. Perhaps another person remains silent, but you do not immediately abandon yourself. This is another reality beginning to become inhabited. The outer world may then respond through 1,000 natural channels, a different tone, a different choice, a different boundary, a different letter, a different opportunity, a different recognition, a different road. Do not attempt to predict which. The important thing tonight is that you understand you have always been stepping into realities. Every expectation has been a doorway. Every repeated inner conclusion has been a room. Every I am has been an address. You have lived inside states and called them circumstances. Now you can distinguish the house from the weather outside. Weather changes. A state can be changed too, but it is changed consciously from within. Tonight, do not ask only what you want tomorrow to bring. Ask where you are already living when you imagine tomorrow. When you think of love, where do you go? When you think of money, where do you go? When you think of work, where do you go? When you think of the unanswered matter, where do you go? That place is the state. See it without judgment. If it is the old state, you have discovered the doorway you have been using. Now choose another. You do not need to slam the old door. Simply stop entering it automatically. Perhaps place your hand inwardly upon another door. Behind it is not a perfect life. It is another identity. A self who does not assume rejection. A self who does not predict ruin. A self who does not live from being overlooked. A self who does not force the whole bridge into view. Enter. The room may be quiet. Stay. You do not need to decorate it. You do not need to know how long you will remain. You are learning where it is. This is enough. Consciousness is not neutral. Tonight, let it be deliberate. Let expectation cease being fear's private kingdom. Let imagination serve the end you actually desire. If you must travel forward before sleep, do not travel as the frightened self. Travel as the one who has already stopped asking whether she belongs. Travel as the one who can breathe because the essential matter is no longer being used as a threat. Travel as the one who expects that life can meet her favorably without her controlling every incident. Then return to the bed. You do not need to stay in tomorrow. The state has been touched. Bring it back into the present. This is the secret. You do not carry yourself to the future. You bring the future state into the present. The event may belong to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Tomorrow's conversation may wait. The state of being understood can begin now. Tomorrow's financial event may wait. The state of support can begin now. Tomorrow's opportunity may wait. The state of being useful and well placed can begin now. Tomorrow's visible answer may wait. The inner end does not have to. You have been stepping into realities all your life. Tonight, step consciously, not into a fantasy you must defend, into a state you can rest within. Let the state be simple enough to sleep in. Let it be quiet enough that no argument is required. Let it be spacious enough that the bridge may choose its form. You are not waiting for morning to grant you another identity. The identity is selected before morning, and when tomorrow finally arrives, it will not meet an empty consciousness. It will meet the state you have already begun to occupy. It will meet the state you have already begun to occupy. And now I would have you understand something that will save you from a great deal of unnecessary strain. The reality you desire is rarely contained in one circumstance alone. You may believe that what you want is one person, one sum of money, one position, one letter, one invitation, one answer, one house, one journey, one particular door opening at one particular hour. The mind sees the form and says, "There, that is the thing. If I can obtain that, then I will have what I want." But look beneath the form. What would that circumstance mean to you? What state would it allow you to feel? What would become natural if the thing were already yours? This question takes you beneath the surface of desire. A woman may say, "I want this particular man to choose me." But perhaps beneath the person is the deeper desire to be loved without uncertainty, to be wanted without pursuit, to feel secure in affection, to know mutual devotion, tenderness, companionship, and the quiet dignity of being cherished. The man is the form she sees. Being cherished is the state she longs to inhabit. Another says, "I need this particular sum of money." Perhaps the sum matters greatly. Perhaps an obligation must be met. Perhaps the number is not arbitrary. But beneath the number may be freedom from constant calculation, the ability to meet responsibilities without dread, the relief of not shrinking before every expense, the dignity of being able to choose rather than merely endure. The money is the form, support and sufficiency are the state. Another says, "I must have this position." Perhaps the position would indeed be suitable, but beneath it may be usefulness, recognition, meaningful contribution, confidence, purpose, the satisfaction of seeing one's gifts received and rewarded. The position is the form. Being useful and well placed is the state. Another says, "This decision must go in my favor." Beneath the decision may be safety, vindication, movement, relief, freedom from uncertainty. The decision is the form. The release from suspense is the state. Do not misunderstand me. I am not telling you that forms do not matter. They matter because consciousness desires expression. If you desire marriage, you do not merely desire an abstract mist called love. You desire relationship. If you desire a home, you do not merely desire the idea of shelter. You desire a place. If you desire financial improvement, you may indeed require actual money, and not merely pleasant thoughts about money. Form matters, but form is not the foundation. The state is foundational. And when you confuse the form with the whole state, you make one circumstance carry a burden it was never meant to carry. You say, "Unless this one person changes, I cannot be loved. Unless this one payment arrives, I cannot be supported. Unless this one position opens, I cannot be successful. Unless this one road remains available, I cannot be guided." Then the form becomes a prison around the state. You have taken something vast and placed it inside one narrow vessel. No wonder anxiety appears. If all love is contained in one person, every silence becomes catastrophe. If all supply is contained in one source, every delay becomes danger. If all purpose is contained in one position, every refusal becomes a judgment upon your entire life. If all guidance is contained in one road, every turn becomes failure. This is not because the desire is wrong. It is because consciousness has mistaken one expression for the whole principle. The form is specific. The state is foundational. Let this distinction become quiet within you. The form is specific. The state is foundational. You may prefer a specific form and still remain rooted in a state larger than it. This is where desire becomes spacious rather than desperate. Suppose you love someone and desire reconciliation. You need not immediately say, then I must forget the person and desire only love in general. That would be another form of violence against the heart. If reconciliation is your genuine desire, you may imagine reconciliation. You may hear the loving words. You may feel the hand in yours. You may imagine the ordinary peace of being together. But ask yourself what makes the scene desirable. Is it merely that this person is physically present? Or is it the mutual affection, respect, warmth, loyalty, understanding, and security implied by the scene? Feel those qualities. They are the state. If your scene contains the person but not the state, you have missed the end. You may imagine them beside you, while inwardly fearing their departure. You may imagine the conversation, while wondering whether they truly mean what they say. You may imagine reconciliation, while remaining the one who expects abandonment. Then the form has been pictured, but the state has not been entered. Go deeper. What would it feel like if love were secure enough that you did not need to interrogate it? What would it feel like if affection were mutual enough that you did not need to chase it? What would it feel like if belonging were natural enough that silence did not immediately become rejection? This is the state beneath the form. Rest there. Then the imagined person, if included, appears within love rather than as the source of love. This is a profound difference. You are no longer saying, become different so that I may finally become loved. You are saying, I enter the state of being cherished, and I allow relationship to express that state faithfully. You do not command another human being inwardly as though consciousness were a whip. You accept the fulfilled relationship. You choose the state. You permit the bridge to arrange the form. This frees imagination from obsession, for obsession is often the attempt to squeeze a whole state through one opening. You watch one person, one letter, one date, one behavior, one expression. And because the state has been imprisoned there, your attention cannot leave. You believe that if you stop watching the form, you will lose the state. But the state is within consciousness. It can remain while the form is unseen. The person can leave the imaginal scene, and being cherished can remain. The account can disappear from the mind, and support can remain. The office can fade, and usefulness can remain. The road can disappear, and guidance can remain. This is why the state is foundational. It survives the fading of the picture. A picture is a doorway. The state is the room. Do not remain endlessly at the doorway. Enter. Perhaps money is the subject that troubles you tonight. You may have placed an exact figure before the mind. There is nothing wrong with that. A definite sum can imply a definite end. But ask what the figure means. Would you feel relief? Would you stop calculating every small expense? Would you feel capable of making choices with greater dignity? Would you sleep without imagining every future obligation? Would you be able to help someone without fear that generosity endangered you? Would work feel less like rescue and more like expression? These are qualities of the state. Do not merely stare at the figure. Enter the life in which the figure has already done what you wanted it to do. Perhaps the deepest imaginal scene is not seeing money at all. Perhaps it is calmly placing a paid account away. Perhaps it is hearing yourself say, everything has been handled. Perhaps it is choosing something necessary without the old contraction. Perhaps it is sitting in an ordinary room with the extraordinary absence of financial fear. This is why living from the end can be so quiet. The state beneath money may feel like having nothing to prove to the number. Money becomes an instrument rather than a judge. You can still act wisely. You can plan. You can work. You can save. You can make inquiries. But the whole identity is no longer held hostage to the visible account. The form is specific. The state is foundational. You want money, enter support. You want a position, enter usefulness. You want recognition, enter being seen and valued. You want reconciliation, enter mutual love. You want a decision, enter relief. You want a home, enter belonging and settledness. You want a new beginning, enter the self for whom the old ending no longer defines what is possible. This does not reduce desire. It reveals its true dimensions. You may discover that your desire was larger than the object you had chosen to represent it. A woman says, I want him to send the letter. Perhaps. But perhaps the deeper reality is that she wants to stop wondering whether she matters. The letter becomes enormous because it has been given the task of answering the question, am I worthy of love? No letter should carry such weight. Let the letter be a letter. Let being cherished answer the deeper question. Then, if the letter comes, it can be received as expression rather than salvation. This is an important distinction. A form asked to save identity becomes heavy. The person must not merely love you, they must rescue you from every former rejection. The money must not merely meet a need, it must prove that you will never again know uncertainty. The position must not merely provide work, it must prove that every former disappointment was wrong about you. The decision must not merely move one matter, it must restore your whole sense of worth. You have made the form responsible for too much. Release it from that responsibility. Let consciousness carry identity. Let circumstances express identity. This is proper order. The outer world becomes lighter when it is no longer required to create your inner name. You can want deeply without demanding that one event become God. This is one of the differences between desire and idolatry. Desire says, I would love this expression. Idolatry says, without this expression, the state itself does not exist. You may love the form, do not worship the form. You may desire the person, do not make the person the creator of your lovability. You may desire the money, do not make money the creator of your worth. You may desire the position, do not make the title the creator of your usefulness. You may desire the road, do not make the road the creator of guidance. Return calls to consciousness. This is what I mean when I tell you to assume the state. The state gives form its meaning. Without the state, the form may arrive and still fail to satisfy. How many have obtained what they wanted and carried the old identity into possession? The person enters the relationship but remains afraid of abandonment. Now every day becomes an effort to prevent loss. The money arrives, but the state of scarcity remains. Now the person watches the money leave with the same fear that existed before it came. The position is gained, but the state of inadequacy remains. Now recognition becomes another arena in which failure is expected. The house is acquired, but the consciousness of not belonging remains. Now even home does not feel like home. The form changed. The state followed the old pattern. This is why I insist that the reality you desire is not merely a circumstance. You do not only want the thing, you want to be the person for whom the thing belongs naturally. This is the reality. A new outer condition, joined to an old identity, may feel strangely temporary. A new state can receive the outer condition as natural. Therefore, ask not only, what do I want? Ask, who would I be if this were natural? Not extraordinary, natural. There is great wisdom in the word natural. If love were natural to you, how would you interpret a small misunderstanding? Would every disagreement become evidence that love has disappeared? Probably not. You would remain secure enough to address the disagreement without turning it into identity. If financial support were natural, how would you meet an ordinary expense? Perhaps with attention, perhaps with calculation, but not with the feeling that the universe has delivered a sentence against you. If usefulness were natural, how would you meet criticism? You might listen, you might improve, you might disagree, but the criticism would not immediately destroy your sense of capacity. If guidance were natural, how would you meet a changed plan? You might be disappointed, but you would not conclude that no path exists. The state creates proportion. One event remains one event. It is no longer asked to define the whole. This is one of the greatest signs that the state is becoming natural. You stop turning incidents into totalities. A person is quiet today. You do not say, no one loves me. An expense appears. You do not say, I am doomed to scarcity. One opportunity disappears. You do not say, success is not for me. A plan changes. You do not say, I have lost my path. The event remains specific. The state remains foundational. This is psychological order, and order brings rest. Tonight, perhaps one particular form has occupied your mind excessively. Notice it without shame. Perhaps a person's face returns again and again. Perhaps a number, perhaps a letter, perhaps an appointment, perhaps a decision, perhaps one road you desperately wish would open. Do not push the image away. Ask it what it represents. Why do I want you? Let the answer come gently. Because I want to feel chosen. Because I want to feel safe. Because I want to feel free. Because I want to know that my work matters. Because I want to feel settled. Because I want to stop waiting. Now you have found the state beneath the form. Let the form rest. For a moment, close your eyes inwardly upon the object and remain with the essence. Chosen, safe, free, useful, settled, released from waiting. Do not turn these into a rapid list. Choose the one beneath your desire. Perhaps the whole desire is simply the longing to exhale. Then exhale. The body may enter the state before the mind finishes explaining it. You do not need a complicated imaginal act. If the deeper state is being chosen, perhaps the feeling of no longer competing is enough. If the deeper state is support, perhaps letting the shoulders release the burden of the means is enough. If the deeper state is usefulness, perhaps sensing that your contribution has a place is enough. If the deeper state is relief, perhaps the end of one question is enough. Feel how the state can be touched without the object being present. This is crucial. You have been assuming that the object contains the feeling, but the feeling is available in consciousness because consciousness has experienced, imagined, or recognized the state. The object may express it. The object does not manufacture the capacity to feel it. If you had no capacity for relief, no event could give you relief. If you had no capacity for love, no person could awaken love. If you had no capacity for belonging, no home could produce the experience of home. The state is known within. The form gives it visible clothing. Therefore, tonight you may put on the state before the garment appears outside. This is assumption. You are not stealing from tomorrow. You are allowing tomorrow to receive a state rather than demanding tomorrow create one. Think of a musician who desires a particular instrument because she longs to express music. The instrument matters, yet the music is larger than the instrument. If she makes one instrument the whole of music, then its absence feels like the death of expression. But if she knows the music lives in her, she may still prefer the instrument, seek it, and rejoice when it comes, without believing that music itself has ceased to exist while she waits. Your desires are like this. The form is an instrument. The state is the music. Love is larger than one letter. Support is larger than one account. Purpose is larger than one title. Guidance is larger than one road. Do not stop desiring the instrument. Remember the music. Then your imagination becomes less cramped. You no longer force one form to carry the whole of God. The bridge has room. This room is necessary because the conscious mind cannot foresee every faithful expression of a state. You know what being cherished feels like. You may not know every event through which your relationships must reorganize to reflect it. You know what support means. You may not know every source through which provision can come. You know what meaningful usefulness feels like. You may not know which place, introduction, decision, or change becomes part of its expression. You know what guidance means. You do not know every turn. The state knows its own nature. The bridge discovers the road. Your task is not to dictate every stone. Your task is to know where you are going inwardly. This protects you from obsessive control. For control often begins when the state has been narrowed into one form. The mind says, if I do not manage this person, I may lose love. If I do not force this payment, I may lose support. If I do not make this appointment happen, I may lose opportunity. If I do not preserve this road, I may lose the destination. So you begin mentally pulling upon the world. You imagine conversations not because they give you peace, but because you are trying to push another person. You repeat statements not because they establish identity, but because you are frightened that silence will stop the result. You inspect signs not because they are useful, but because you need reassurance that the form has not escaped. This is not the ease of assumption. It is fear wearing the clothes of spiritual practice. Return to the state. The state does not need to pull, it receives. The state does not need to imprison the bridge, it permits. The state does not need one person to become a puppet, it knows the essence of relationship. The state does not need one channel to become the whole supply, it knows support. The state does not need one door to remain open, it knows destination. This is strength without domination. You are not powerless because you release control over form. You are returning power to the true level. You cannot wisely govern every outward actor. You can select the state from which every actor is encountered. This is enough. Indeed, it is more than enough. For a change of state changes the entire field of relationship. Imagine two women receiving the same silence from someone they care about. One lives in abandonment. She checks inwardly every few minutes. She imagines the worst. She may pursue from fear. She may withdraw dramatically to provoke reassurance. Her whole behavior is organized around the state of not being chosen. The other woman desires communication just as sincerely, but she occupies being cherished. Silence may disappoint her. She may decide to speak. She may decide to wait. She may set a boundary if the pattern is unhealthy, but she does not turn the silence into evidence that she is unlovable. The same outer fact meets another state. The choices change. The relationship changes because one participant is no longer playing the same role. This is how state becomes visible. Or imagine two men confronted by the same financial difficulty. One enters permanent scarcity. His mind races beyond the number. He acts from panic. Perhaps he avoids the problem because it feels too threatening. Perhaps he accepts an unwise arrangement because he believes no other means will appear. The other recognizes the difficulty fully. He does not pretend, but he occupies support. He asks, what is the actual matter before me? What action is available? Whom can I speak with? What can be altered? What can wait? What possibility have I ignored because fear made the field too narrow? The same number meets another state. One state makes the form larger than life. The other keeps the form within life. This is the power of a foundational state. It gives proportion to circumstances. A specific circumstance can change. A foundational state can remain. If one road closes, guidance remains. If one person disappoints you, the capacity for love remains. If one payment is delayed, support remains available as a state and as an organizing principle for action. If one position is denied, usefulness remains. You may feel disappointment. Do not confuse disappointment with the destruction of the state. The fulfilled identity is not a person who never feels. It is a person who does not make every feeling a new address. You may grieve one form and remain rooted in the essence. This is particularly important when life does not follow the exact design of the conscious mind. Do not force yourself to call the unwanted pleasant. You may say, I wanted that door, and I am disappointed that it closed. This is honest. Then add nothing catastrophic. You do not need to say, therefore there is no guidance. You may say, I do not yet know the bridge. The state remains. This allows grief without collapse, desire without slavery, preference without imprisonment. It is a mature use of imagination. You are not required to become indifferent to form. Indifference is not the goal. Freedom is. You may care. You may prefer. You may hope for one expression. But you do not make the state impossible unless the form obeys exactly. Suppose you desire a particular home. Imagine yourself there if the scene gives you the state naturally. Feel the key, the door, the quiet of returning. But notice what the house represents: belonging, safety, privacy, beauty, stability, perhaps family, perhaps independence. These are the state. Let the scene give you these. Then do not spend the night attempting to force every transaction, every person, every date, every circumstance involved. Enter home. Let the bridge arrange the address. Perhaps the exact house is yours. Perhaps an even more faithful expression appears. You do not need to decide tonight. The state is home. The form is allowed to reveal itself. Or perhaps you desire recognition. Imagine applause if it truly gives you the state. But perhaps applause is too dramatic and keeps you thinking of spectators. Go deeper. What would recognition feel like on an ordinary Tuesday? Perhaps someone trusts your judgment. Perhaps your work is requested. Perhaps you are compensated fairly. Perhaps you sit down to begin your work without wondering whether you are capable. This is more foundational. You have entered usefulness and confidence. The stage may come later. The state exists before the stage. The form is specific. The state is foundational. Let these words become part of tonight's understanding. The form can be desired. The state must be inhabited. The form can be imagined. The state must become natural. The form can change. The state can remain. The form can surprise you. The state can recognize itself in the surprise. This last point is beautiful. If you know the state, you can recognize fulfillment even when it arrives wearing unfamiliar clothing. If you do not know the state, you may reject a faithful answer because it does not resemble the narrow picture fear demanded. You ask for respect and receive the courage to leave a disrespectful arrangement. You say, "This is not what I asked," but perhaps dignity is already taking form. You ask for support, and an old obligation is removed rather than new money arriving immediately. You almost overlook the provision because you were watching one channel. You ask for guidance, and an expected road closes. At first you call it failure. Later you discover another road that could not have been seen while the first remained open. Do not insist that every redirection is secretly favorable. You do not know that in advance, but allow the bridge enough freedom that you do not condemn every unexpected movement. The state is your compass. Does this movement ultimately lead toward greater dignity, greater support, greater mutuality, greater usefulness, greater peace? You may only know with time. Therefore, remain open. You do not need to interpret every turn at midnight. The state is larger than the circumstance. This protects you when circumstances appear contradictory. A single contradictory event cannot contain the entire state. Suppose you occupy being respected, and tomorrow someone behaves rudely. Do not panic and say, "I failed to assume correctly." Their behavior may belong to their state. It may require a response. Respect may now express through your boundary rather than through their immediate politeness. The state is larger than one encounter. Suppose you occupy support, and tomorrow an unexpected expense appears. Do not declare that support has vanished. The expense is one event. Deal with it. Do not let it become the whole field. Suppose you occupy being cherished, and someone you care about remains uncertain. Being cherished remains larger than their present uncertainty. You may still desire clarity, but identity does not need to collapse while clarity is forming. Suppose you occupy success, and one proposal is refused. The proposal was a form. Usefulness, recognition, and fruitful expression are states larger than one answer. This is persistence without blindness. You see circumstances. You do not worship them. You respond. You do not become them. You learn. You do not sentence the whole future from them. A state gives you room around an event. Without that room, every event becomes suffocating. With that room, an event may be difficult and still remain finite. Tonight, create that room. Perhaps the object of your desire appears before you. Let it appear. Now ask gently, "What do you give me in imagination?" Not physically, psychologically. Do you give me security? Do you give me belonging? Do you give me freedom? Do you give me relief? Do you give me recognition? Do you give me peace? Find the word. Then let the object fade for a few breaths. Keep the state. Can you do this? If the person fades, can being cherished remain for one breath? If the money fades, can support remain for one breath? If the position fades, can usefulness remain? If the house fades, can belonging remain? If the answer fades, can relief remain? This simple exercise teaches consciousness that the state does not depend upon holding the picture. You do not lose fulfillment when imagination becomes quiet. The state can rest without imagery. This will become important as sleep deepens. A complex picture requires wakefulness. A state can descend with you. At first you may imagine. Then you feel. Then you no longer know whether you are imagining or remembering. Then the words fade. Then only the atmosphere remains. Then sleep. The state is carried farther than the picture. This is why tonight I want you to find the state beneath the object. The object may disappear as consciousness becomes drowsy. The essence can remain, cherished, supported, useful, guided, settled, free. Perhaps your state does not need a name. Perhaps you simply feel the difference between carrying the problem and not carrying it. That difference is enough. You may say inwardly, if this were truly settled, I would not be thinking about it this way. Then stop thinking about it that way for a moment. You have entered the state through cessation. No need for brilliance. No need for intense visualization. The deeper work is simpler. The object says, look at me. The state says, become me. Do not merely look, become. If the desired reality contains love, become one to whom love is natural. If it contains financial ease, become one for whom support is part of life. If it contains success, become one who assumes usefulness and belonging. If it contains peace, become one who does not permit every incident to become an emergency. You will not become these perfectly in one night. Perfection is not required. Begin residence. A state becomes home through return. Perhaps tomorrow, the form tempts you again. The person is silent. Return to being cherished. The account concerns you. Return to support, while acting wisely. The decision remains unknown. Return to relief as an inner direction. The road remains unclear. Return to guidance, without demanding the entire map. Each return enlarges the state. Eventually the form loses its exaggerated power. You can desire it without kneeling before it. This is true freedom. You no longer say, give me this and then I will become. You say, I become the state, and I allow life to give the state its proper form. There is dignity in this order. There is rest. The world no longer needs to be pulled by the collar. Another person no longer needs to be mentally supervised. One payment no longer needs to be watched through the night. One appointment does not decide the year. One road does not decide the destination. One event does not decide the self. The state is larger. Feel the spaciousness of that. The state is larger. Larger than one silence. Larger than one number. Larger than one refusal. Larger than one delay. Larger than one person's mood. Larger than one mistake. The state is foundational. It can contain changing circumstances without being remade by each one. Tonight you are choosing foundation rather than surface. The surface will move. It always does. People change their minds. Letters arrive. Numbers rise and fall. Plans alter. Roads open and close. Bodies tire and recover. Seasons change. But if identity rises and falls with every movement, consciousness never rests. Choose deeper ground. I am cherished. Let people move. I am supported. Let channels move. I am useful. Let positions move. I am guided. Let roads move. Do not say these words with force. Let them describe the foundation. You do not command every wave. You remember that you are not the wave. The surface may change by morning, or it may require a longer bridge. You do not know. But you can stop placing your whole being upon the surface. Rest deeper. Perhaps tonight your desire remains very specific. That is fine. See it if you wish. Love it. Welcome it. Then ask, what state does this imply? Take the state with you into sleep. Let the form stand at the edge of consciousness, like a beautiful symbol. The symbol may fade. The state remains. You do not need to choose between specificity and freedom. You can have both. A specific desire, a foundational state, a definite preference, an open bridge, a clear end, freedom in the middle. This is balance. You do not dilute the desire, you deepen it. You discover that beneath I want this is I want to be this. And being is nearer than having, because being begins now. The form may belong to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Tonight, become interested in the state, not because form is unimportant, because state is where the form receives its psychological life. The beloved person matters, but being cherished is the foundation. The money matters, but support is the foundation. The work matters, but usefulness is the foundation. The answer matters, but relief is the foundation. The road matters, but guidance is the foundation. Find the foundation. Rest there. If the form comes to mind, let it come as an expression of the state, not as the jailer of it. The person appears within love. The money appears within support. The position appears within usefulness. The road appears within guidance. The answer appears within relief. Now the image serves consciousness. Consciousness no longer serves the image. This is the proper relationship. And when the mind begins to grasp one form anxiously, return to the foundation. Say quietly, the state is larger than this one circumstance. The state is larger than this one circumstance. No argument, only perspective. This person matters, but love is larger. This payment matters, but support is larger. This decision matters, but my life is larger. This road matters, but guidance is larger. This moment matters, but being is larger. The state is larger than the circumstance. Let the sentence become less intellectual. Let it become release. You do not have to carry the whole of fulfillment through one narrow opening. There is room. There are roads you cannot yet see. There are expressions you do not need to design. There is a state available before form completes itself. Enter the state. Leave the machinery. If the object returns, bless the desire without clinging to the means. Yes, I desire this, and I know what it means. I choose the meaning now. I choose being cherished. I choose support. I choose usefulness. I choose guidance. I choose relief. Then rest. The form may come in its faithful manner. Your task tonight is not to force one circumstance to become the whole reality. Your task is to occupy the reality large enough to contain the circumstance. Let consciousness become larger than the object of concern. Let identity become larger than the event. Let the state become the home. The form may enter that home in its proper hour. For now, the foundation is enough. And once the foundation is chosen, you no longer need to stand guard over every outer stone. And once the foundation is chosen, you no longer need to stand guard over every outer stone. Now let us go one step deeper, because there is something about desire itself that you may have misunderstood for many years. You have often treated desire as evidence that something is missing. You want love, therefore you conclude that love is absent. You want greater freedom, therefore you conclude that you are imprisoned by circumstance. You want money, therefore you conclude that you are poor. You want recognition, therefore you conclude that you are unseen. You want a new beginning, therefore you conclude that the present has already defeated you. And because you interpret desire as proof of absence, the very thing that could point you toward another state becomes a source of suffering. I would have you look at desire differently tonight. Desire need not be an accusation. It may be an invitation. It may be consciousness revealing a state that you have not yet consented to occupy. Suppose you stand before a window at night and see, in another house, a warm room filled with light. The light does not insult the darkness around you. It simply reveals another condition. So with desire. The appearance of a desire may reveal another state of being. You do not have to despise the state you presently occupy. You do not have to condemn yourself for wanting more. And you do not have to run after the form as though it were escaping you. You can become still enough to ask what the desire is showing you. If this were already resolved, who would I be? Do not ask only what would I possess. Ask who would I be? If the relationship were harmonious, who would you be? If the money were sufficient, who would you be? If the work were established, who would you be? If the decision had already gone in your favor, who would you be? If the uncertainty had ended, who would you be? This question turns desire away from pursuit and toward identity. And identity is where the transformation begins. You may say, if this were resolved, I would be calmer. Then calmness is part of the state. You may say, I would no longer feel that I must prove myself. Then dignity is part of the state. You may say, I would stop wondering whether I am wanted. Then being chosen is part of the state. You may say, I would stop counting every possibility of loss. Then security is part of the state. You may say, I would finally feel free to think about something else. Then freedom from mental captivity is part of the state. Do you see? The desire has begun to disclose the person you are seeking to become. Not a different human being in essence, a different state of the same consciousness. The desire points toward a new arrangement of identity. This is why I tell you not to ask only what you wish to have. Ask who naturally has it. Do not ask only, how do I get love? Ask, who am I when love is natural to me? Do not ask only, how do I get money? Ask, who am I when support is no longer a strange exception? Do not ask only, how do I become successful? Ask, who am I when useful expression and recognition have become ordinary? Do not ask only, how do I make tomorrow favorable? Ask, who am I when favorable movement is no longer difficult to believe? This changes everything. For a person may spend years trying to acquire the symbols of a state while never occupying the state itself. She wants to be chosen, so she pursues people. She wants to feel secure, so she attempts to control every possible outcome. She wants to feel important, so she chases recognition. She wants to feel supported, so she watches one source of money with terror. All the while, the state beneath the desire remains unoccupied. The outer pursuit becomes endless, because each form is asked to produce an identity that consciousness has not accepted. It is like filling a cup with water, while refusing to admit that the cup has a hole in its bottom. Another event arrives. For a moment, relief. Then the old state returns. Another person gives affection. For a moment, assurance. Then the old question returns. Another payment arrives. For a moment, safety. Then the old fear returns. Another success appears. For a moment, confidence. Then the old doubt returns. You may have called this bad luck. You may have called it instability. But perhaps you were trying to maintain a new circumstance from an old identity. Tonight, we are doing the opposite. We begin with identity. What would become ordinary if your desire were fulfilled? This is one of the most useful questions you can ask. Not what would become spectacular. What would become ordinary? If you were deeply loved, perhaps receiving affection would become ordinary. A kind word would not feel like evidence you had to preserve. You would receive it. If you were financially supported, perhaps paying an ordinary expense would cease to be a spiritual crisis. You would attend to it and move on. If your work were established, perhaps being asked for your contribution would no longer astonish you. You would simply do the work. If the matter was settled, perhaps you would not think about it for hours. You would become interested in something else. The fulfilled state is often identified by what has become too ordinary to demand constant attention. This is why desire, when understood, leads you beyond excitement. At first you may imagine the dramatic result, but beneath the dramatic result is an ordinary life. You do not want merely one moment of being loved. You want love to become normal. You do not want merely one moment of having enough. You want sufficiency to become normal. You do not want merely one successful hour. You want success, usefulness, and confidence to become part of the atmosphere of your life. Then begin tonight by touching the atmosphere. Do not wait for the furniture. Enter the room. What is the atmosphere? Perhaps it is ease. Perhaps it is quiet certainty. Perhaps it is a sense that you no longer have to defend your place. Perhaps it is the absence of hurry. Perhaps it is the feeling that life is not against you. Perhaps it is the simple recognition, I belong here. These are states, and desire has revealed them to you. You need not chase desire away. Some people become frightened of wanting. They think that if desire appears, they have failed to live in the end. They notice that they still want the relationship, the money, the change, the opportunity, and they accuse themselves of being in lack. Do not turn this teaching into another form of self-punishment. A desire may still appear after you have begun to occupy another state. You are human. You may still prefer one outcome. You may still feel excitement about its arrival. You may still experience moments of impatience. The question is not whether desire has vanished. The question is what desire means to you now. Does desire mean, I am empty until this appears? Or does desire mean, this would be a beautiful expression of a state I am learning to inhabit? These are entirely different relations to desire. One is hunger without identity. The other is preference from identity. One says, I need the form to tell me who I am. The other says, I know the state, and I welcome its expression. This is why I do not ask you to kill desire. I ask you to understand it. Desire can become a messenger. It comes and says, there is a state here that you have not yet allowed to become natural. Do not seize the messenger by the throat. Listen to the message. Perhaps you desire affection. The message may be, become acquainted with being cherished. Perhaps you desire more money. The message may be, become acquainted with support, sufficiency, and worth. Perhaps you desire a new profession. The message may be, become acquainted with usefulness, confidence, contribution, and reward. Perhaps you desire peace. The message may be, become acquainted with a self who does not consider vigilance a virtue. Perhaps you desire freedom. The message may be, become acquainted with a self who is no longer psychologically bound to the old story. When you hear the message, you no longer need to chase the messenger. You turn inward. Who naturally has what I desire? Be careful with the word naturally. I do not ask, who forces himself to feel successful, who desperately tries to believe he is loved, who shouts that he is wealthy while fear trembles beneath every word. No, who naturally has it. What is natural to that person? A woman who naturally knows herself cherished, does not wake each morning and begin a trial to determine whether she is lovable. She may have questions in a relationship. She may experience disagreement. She may even have to make difficult decisions. But the identity itself is not perpetually on trial. A man who naturally knows himself capable does not interpret every mistake as proof that he should never have tried. He may correct the mistake. He may learn. He may even be disappointed, but capability remains his home. A person who naturally experiences support does not believe that wisdom is unnecessary. He does not spend carelessly in order to prove abundance. He may be prudent. He may plan carefully. But prudence and fear are not the same state. The supported person can count money without being counted by money. This is the difference. The thing you wish to have usually changes your relationship to ordinary experience. Therefore, do not imagine only the grand result. Imagine the ordinary mind of the one who has it. Suppose you desire a large financial improvement. Many would immediately picture a vast sum. There is nothing wrong with that. But I might ask you, what do you do the following Thursday? The great moment has passed. The money is no longer new. How do you think then? Perhaps you sit at a table and handle an ordinary matter without fear. Perhaps you make a decision based upon what is wise, rather than what is desperate. Perhaps someone asks for your help, and you know you can give it. Perhaps you simply sleep. No fanfare, no procession, no trumpet. You sleep. That simple sleep may contain the fulfilled state more truthfully than an hour of imagined celebration. Suppose you desire marriage. You may imagine the ceremony. But what happens months later on an ordinary evening? There may be dishes upon the table. A lamp may burn in another room. A familiar voice may call your name. Nothing dramatic. Yet there is belonging. There is mutuality. There is the absence of wondering whether you are alone in love. This is the state. Suppose you desire recognition in your work. You could imagine a great announcement. But perhaps the deeper scene is an ordinary morning, when you begin your work already assuming that it matters. You do not wonder whether anyone will ever see you. You are occupied. You are useful. Your work belongs somewhere. The state has become ordinary. This is where desire leads, if you allow it to mature. At first, desire shouts about the form. Then it whispers about identity. Listen for the whisper. What would no longer trouble me? This question is equally important. If the matter were resolved, what would lose its power to disturb you? Would you still rehearse the same conversation every night? Would you still study another person's every word for hidden rejection? Would you still wake and immediately calculate what could go wrong? Would you still imagine every future expense? Would you still compare yourself to those who seem farther ahead? Would you still feel the need to explain your worth to everyone? Would you still ask whether life had forgotten you? What would no longer trouble you? Do not answer in order to suppress emotion. Answer in order to identify the state. Perhaps the fulfilled self is not a person who possesses more. Perhaps she is a person who is troubled by less. This is a profound change. You thought your desired reality would be measured by addition. More money, more affection, more opportunity, more recognition, more certainty. But perhaps the first evidence of that reality is subtraction. Less fear, less pursuit, less interpretation, less self-doubt, less need to monitor, less dependence upon one person's mood, less worship of one circumstance, less demand to know every step. What if the new reality begins by removing burdens from consciousness before adding forms to circumstance? Would you recognize it, or would you miss the change because you were watching only for the object? This is why you must know the state. The state recognizes its own signs. If your desire is freedom, then the first movement toward freedom may be that one old fear no longer occupies 3 hours of your day. If your desire is love, the first movement may be that you stop begging inwardly. If your desire is success, the first movement may be that you begin your work without the old need for immediate validation. If your desire is support, the first movement may be that you calmly address a problem you once avoided. These changes may not look like the final form, yet they belong to the identity that can receive the final form without destroying it through old assumptions. The state prepares the vessel. Imagine a man who has lived for years expecting humiliation. Then one evening he desires respect. If he treats respect merely as the outward behavior of others, he spends his time trying to command every face. He wants each person to speak properly, to approve, to recognize him, to treat him according to his wishes. But suppose he asks instead, who naturally experiences respect? He may discover a man who respects himself, a man who does not remain where contempt is habitual, a man who can hear disagreement without collapsing, a man who does not make another person's arrogance into a description of his identity, a man who speaks plainly, a man who can leave a room without carrying that room home. Now respect has become a state, and from that state, his relationships may rearrange in ways he could not have achieved through anxious control. Some people may respond differently. Some relationships may become closer. Some may fall away. He does not need to command the exact form. He occupies dignity. The state begins to choose its proper environment. This is what I mean by identity. Identity is not merely a sentence repeated about yourself. It is the position from which thoughts become natural. If you say, I am loved, but spend the next hour mentally pursuing proof, the sentence has not yet become identity. Do not condemn yourself. Simply notice the difference. The phrase is pointing toward a state. Enter farther. What does the loved identity no longer need to do? Perhaps it no longer needs to beg. Then stop begging in imagination. What does the supported identity no longer need to do? Perhaps it no longer needs to treat every unknown as danger. Then let one unknown remain open. What does the successful identity no longer need to do? Perhaps it no longer needs to ask permission to take its own work seriously. Then take one inward step toward seriousness. This is practical assumption, not performance, not noise, not an attempt to hypnotize yourself with grand words you secretly resist. A state may begin with a single change in what you permit to be normal. You permit respect to be normal. You permit support to be normal. You permit mutual affection to be normal. You permit favorable movement to be normal. You permit yourself to be guided without first understanding the route. At first, the mind may protest. It says, but where is the evidence? You answer, I am not discussing evidence at this moment. I am choosing the state from which evidence will be interpreted. This does not require conflict. A calm answer is enough. The old mind has been trained to look outward before deciding who you are. It asks circumstance for identity. Tonight, you reverse the order. You decide who you are in consciousness, then allow circumstance to meet that identity. This is not arrogance. It is not claiming superiority. It is not refusing facts. It is recognizing that facts alone have never told you who you are. You have always added meaning. Now you will add meaning consciously. If a desire appears, do not immediately run toward the object. Pause. Let the desire become a doorway. Ask, what would this mean if it were mine? Then ask, what part of that meaning can I occupy now? Perhaps you cannot yet accept complete certainty. Can you accept greater peace? Perhaps you cannot yet feel wealthy. Can you accept that one present number is not the totality of future provision. Perhaps you cannot yet feel completely secure in love. Can you accept that another person's present behavior is not the final definition of your lovability? Perhaps you cannot yet feel successful. Can you accept that your usefulness is larger than one judgment? These are not compromises. They are doors. You are moving from the identity of absence toward the identity of possession. Do not despise the first step, because it is not the last. A man crossing a river does not refuse the nearest stone, because it is not the opposite bank. He steps. Then another stone becomes available. So with states. Tonight perhaps you can only say, I am no longer willing to assume the worst. Step there. Then perhaps, I am open to favorable movement. Step there. Then, life supports me in ways I do not yet see. Step there. Then perhaps one day, support feels ordinary. You have crossed without forcing the river. This is how a state becomes natural. Not always through one magnificent leap, sometimes through repeated consent. Yes, I permit this identity. Yes, I permit myself to stop arguing with it. Yes, I permit it to feel less foreign. Yes, I permit it to become ordinary. You do not manufacture the state by force. You cease withholding consent from it. Consider how many desired states you have secretly regarded as belonging to other kinds of people. You say, some people are naturally loved. Some are naturally fortunate. Some are naturally confident. Some are naturally successful. Some always seem to find the right road. You have observed states in others and mistaken them for permanent personal possessions. But a state is not a private country owned by another human being. States are available to consciousness. You have entered unwanted ones without invitation. You can enter desired ones deliberately. You did not require permission to enter anxiety. You simply practiced it until it felt like you. You did not require a certificate to become accustomed to doubt. You returned often enough that doubt became familiar. Then why imagine that peace requires a special admission? Why imagine that being cherished is reserved for another? Why imagine that confidence belongs to a different species of person? The state becomes yours by occupation. You enter. You remain. You return when you wander. Gradually you stop saying, I am trying to be this. You simply are. The identity becomes less visible to you because it has become natural. You do not constantly announce your native language to yourself. You simply speak it. So one day you no longer need to tell yourself every hour, I am worthy. You live without constantly questioning worth. You no longer repeat endlessly, I am supported. You begin to expect that means can appear. You no longer insist, I am loved. You cease interpreting every ambiguity as abandonment. This is the deepening of assumption. It moves from words into expectation, from expectation into identity, from identity into ordinary life, and desire, which once felt like a painful reminder of distance, becomes almost sacred in another sense. It revealed the direction. It said, there is more of you available than the state you presently know. There is a self that can receive this without fear. There is a self that can inhabit this without astonishment. There is a self for whom this does not feel impossible. Enter that self. Do not chase the future version of yourself through time. Meet her as a state tonight. Suppose you imagine yourself a year from now, after the desire has been fulfilled. Do not merely look at her as though she were another person. Ask, what is she no longer carrying? Perhaps she no longer carries this anxiety. Then set a little of it down now. What does she no longer believe? Perhaps she no longer believes she must struggle for every good thing. Then suspend that belief for tonight. What is normal to her? Perhaps being treated with respect. Perhaps knowing where she belongs. Perhaps having enough. Perhaps trusting herself. Let one of these become normal for the next few minutes. You are not required to live the entire year tonight. You are borrowing the identity from the end. This is living from the end in its most intimate sense. The end is not merely the final scene. The end is the self that scene implies. You can occupy the self even when the scene disappears. This is why I ask again. If this were already resolved, who would I be? Not what would I say to everyone. Not how would I prove that it happened. Not how would I show the world. Who would I be in the privacy of my own mind? This is where the truth is found. Perhaps you would be quiet. Perhaps you would no longer discuss the matter internally. Perhaps your attention would return to ordinary life. Perhaps you would begin imagining new things because this old desire no longer occupied the center. Fulfillment frees attention. Remember that. Fulfillment frees attention. If you still believe you must stare at the desire to keep it alive, you have not yet understood possession. What is yours does not vanish because you look away. A man who owns a home does not stand outside all night watching the walls to ensure the house remains his. He enters. He sleeps. A woman in a secure relationship does not have to repeat the beloved's name throughout the night to prevent love from disappearing. She rests. A person whose affairs are in order can think of other matters. Possession gives consciousness permission to move. Therefore, tonight, one of the most faithful acts of assumption may be allowing the desire to leave the center of the mind. You have entered the state. Now let yourself sleep. Do not confuse attention with ownership. You can own inwardly without watching. You can accept without gripping. You can desire without pursuing. You can prefer without imprisoning. You can occupy without announcing. This is the quiet power of assumption. It does not need witnesses, and as sleep approaches, this becomes particularly important. You may not be able to carry a complicated imaginal picture through the whole night. You should not try. Find the identity beneath it. Let the picture soften. Let the face soften. Let the house soften. Let the money soften. Let the office soften. Let the letter soften. Keep only the state. What would I be if this were done? Perhaps there is one word. Safe, cherished, free, supported, established, at peace. Perhaps no word is necessary. There is simply a different way the body rests, a different way the breath moves, a different relationship to tomorrow. That is enough. The state does not need literary perfection. It needs acceptance. You may even find that the desire itself becomes quieter when you occupy the state. Do not fear this. You have not lost the desire. You have stopped using desire as an alarm. There is a great difference. The thing may still be welcomed, but it no longer shouts, "Without me you cannot live." This quiet is not resignation. Resignation says, "I suppose I cannot have it." Fulfillment says, "I no longer need to suffer in order to prove that I want it." Know the difference. One collapses possibility. The other removes strain. You do not surrender the end. You surrender the desperate identity that believes strain creates the end. Tonight, let desire cease being a wound. Let it become instruction. It has pointed toward a state. Thank it if you wish. Then enter. If you desire companionship, enter being companioned in consciousness. If you desire prosperity, enter sufficiency and wise freedom. If you desire recognition, enter usefulness and belonging. If you desire restoration, enter the state in which the old story no longer has the final word. If you desire peace, stop requiring the whole world to become quiet before you permit peace to exist. The state can begin here, and perhaps tomorrow the form begins to move. Perhaps not visibly at once. That is not tonight's concern. The first movement is already meaningful. You have ceased saying, "Desire proves I do not have." You begin saying, "Desire reveals what I am invited to become conscious of being." That is a different world. The same desire is present, but you stand in another relation to it. Formerly, desire pointed outward and made you run. Now, desire points inward and makes you choose. Formerly, you asked, "Where is it?" Now you ask, "Who am I when it is natural?" Formerly, you counted the distance. Now you occupy the identity. Formerly, you saw absence. Now you see invitation. This is the movement I want you to make tonight. Do not ask only what you wish to have. Ask who naturally has it. Then become acquainted with that person from within. Do not observe her from a distance. Do not admire her as a future stranger. Enter her calm. Enter her expectation. Enter what she no longer fears. Enter what she no longer chases. Enter what has become ordinary to her. Perhaps she is not more dramatic than you. Perhaps she is less dramatic, less frightened, less hurried, less interested in proof, more available to life, more at home in herself, more willing to let the bridge remain unseen. This is the identity you seek, not perfection. Residence. You may enter imperfectly. Enter anyway. You may wander, return, you may still desire. Let desire remind you of the state, rather than accuse you of absence. The desire says, remember who naturally has this. Remember, not with strain, with recognition. There is a version of consciousness in which this is not astonishing. Touch it. There is a version of consciousness in which you do not have to earn the right to be cherished. Touch it. There is a version in which support is not constantly threatened. Touch it. There is a version in which you trust that useful work has a place. Touch it. There is a version in which tomorrow is not regarded as an enemy. Touch it. And if you can touch it for only a moment tonight, let that moment be enough to begin. One moment of true occupation is more meaningful than an hour of frightened repetition. You know the difference. Frightened repetition says, I must make this happen. Occupation says, this is where I rest. Choose rest. You do not have to finish the whole journey before sleep. You need only know which state you are entering. Desire has given you the direction. Now release the chase. Ask once more, quietly, if this were already resolved, who would I be? What would no longer trouble me? What would become ordinary? Do not force the answers. Let them form beneath the words. Perhaps the answer is not a sentence. Perhaps your shoulders drop. Perhaps the jaw softens. Perhaps tomorrow feels a little less final. Perhaps you stop rehearsing one conversation. That may be the answer. The new identity is already beginning to reveal itself through what consciousness no longer needs to do. Let that be enough for this moment. You have found the state beneath the desire. Now, instead of standing outside it and asking how long it will take to arrive, begin to make yourself at home. Now, instead of standing outside it and asking how long it will take to arrive, begin to make yourself at home. And as you do, I want you to notice one of the oldest habits of the human mind. It looks at what is visible today and quietly uses it to manufacture tomorrow. A man sees a delay, and before the day is over, he has converted delay into denial. A woman receives no answer, and by nightfall, silence has become rejection. A figure upon a page is smaller than she hoped, and in imagination that figure becomes the financial condition of the coming month, the coming year, perhaps the whole of her future. One conversation is uncomfortable, and the mind extends it forward until it becomes the character of the entire relationship. One door remains closed, and consciousness begins constructing a world in which every door is closed. The senses offer one fact. Imagination turns it into a future. This happens so quickly that you rarely notice the moment of construction. You say, I am simply looking at the facts, but the fact may be very small compared with the conclusion you have built upon it. The fact may be, no letter arrived today. The conclusion becomes, no favorable letter is coming. The fact may be, this amount is presently available. The conclusion becomes, I will never have enough. The fact may be, this person was distant this evening. The conclusion becomes, affection is disappearing. The fact may be, the opportunity has been delayed. The conclusion becomes, my path is blocked. The fact belongs to the present arrangement. The conclusion has already entered the future. Do you see what imagination has done? It has taken a piece of evidence and appointed it architect of a day that has not yet been built. This is what I ask you to stop doing tonight. Do not use the visible present as the architect of the imagined future. Let today describe today. Do not require it to describe tomorrow. This does not mean you become foolish. It does not mean that you refuse practical information. If an account requires attention, attend to it. If a conversation must be had, have it when the hour is proper. If a physician, advisor, employer, tradesman, or loved one gives you information that requires wise action, wisdom does not demand that you close your ears. The law of assumption is not the art of pretending that facts cannot be seen. It is the art of refusing to make facts into gods. There is a vast difference. A fact may inform you. It need not define you. A fact may require action. It need not dictate expectation. A fact may belong to the present. It need not become the blueprint of the future. When you understand this, you become capable of looking directly at circumstances without kneeling before them. The senses say, this is what has become visible. You answer, yes, this is what is visible now. Notice the importance of that final word. Now, the senses can report what stands before you. They cannot report the totality of what consciousness may yet experience. The eye can see the road before the bend. It cannot see every mile beyond the bend. Yet the traveler does not conclude that the road ends because vision ends. He simply knows that sight has a horizon. Your present circumstances also have a horizon. You see as far as this moment permits. You see the present arrangement. You see what has already arrived. You see what another person has already said. You see what has already been written. You see what has already been earned, spent, accepted, refused, delayed, or completed. But you do not see every conversation that has not occurred. You do not see every thought that has not yet entered another mind. You do not see every introduction that has not yet been made. You do not see every change of plan. You do not see every new idea. You do not see every ordinary incident that may become part of a bridge. You do not see all this, and because you do not see it, fear often fills the unseen with yesterday. That is the habit. Where vision stops, memory begins drawing. The unknown is painted with familiar colors. You say, I know how this goes. But perhaps what you mean is, I know how it has gone before. Those are not the same statement. Yesterday can be remembered. Tomorrow cannot yet be remembered. And yet you often speak of tomorrow with the emotional certainty of memory. This is one of the strange powers of imagination. It can make an event that has never occurred feel familiar, simply because you have rehearsed it. Then familiarity becomes mistaken for probability. Probability becomes mistaken for destiny. And destiny becomes a prison built entirely from repetition. Tonight, let that repetition end. You do not know that the silence will continue. You know only that silence exists now. You do not know that the financial condition will remain unchanged. You know only what is presently visible. You do not know that the delay is failure. You know only that the event has not occurred at the time you expected. You do not know that another person's mood is the final nature of the relationship. You know only that this was the mood presented in one moment. Keep circumstances in their proper size. This is a form of spiritual discipline. Fear enlarges evidence. Assumption restores proportion. A small fact can cast an enormous shadow when imagination places the lamp too near it. Move the lamp. See the fact without permitting its shadow to cover the whole room. Suppose you are waiting for someone to communicate with you. Today, no communication came. The senses report silence, that is all. But the mind dislikes unfinished stories, so it completes them. They do not care. They have forgotten me. They have chosen another path. Nothing will change. The future is already decided. Notice how far you have traveled from the original fact. No message became an entire philosophy of your worth. No sound became a verdict. You may have suffered for hours beneath conclusions no person actually delivered. This is why I say the event and the meaning must be distinguished. The event is silence. The meaning is assumed, and what is assumed becomes your state. If you assign rejection to silence, you enter rejection. If you allow silence to remain unfinished, consciousness remains free. You may even choose a more favorable state without inventing a story about the other person. You can say, I remain cherished. You can say, my worth is not suspended while another person is quiet. You can say, I do not yet know the meaning of this interval. These are not attempts to control the absent person. They are refusals to permit absence to control you. There is great power in leaving an event incomplete until life completes it. The anxious mind hates this. It would rather accept a painful certainty than live for an hour without explanation. But uncertainty is not the enemy you imagine. Uncertainty is open space, and open space can hold more than fear. You do not have to fill every silence tonight. Let some questions remain unanswered. They may sleep beside you without entering you. Now consider money. A number can become hypnotic. You see it, and suddenly it appears to contain time. You see today's amount and imagine next week's fear, then next month's limitation, then next year's struggle. The number has not moved. You have. One present figure became a journey through imagined scarcity. Bring yourself back. The figure is here. The future is not contained inside the ink. The number may require wisdom. It may require work. It may require a conversation, a plan, restraint, courage, an application, an idea. But it does not contain every future means. It cannot tell you who you will meet. It cannot tell you what opportunity will emerge. It cannot tell you what expense may disappear. It cannot tell you what ability you may recognize in yourself. It cannot tell you what arrangement will change. A number is honest about what it measures. It becomes dishonest only when imagination forces it to measure what it cannot. Do not ask today's balance to measure tomorrow's possibilities. It was never designed for that task. Let the page be a page. Let consciousness remain larger. You can look at an account and say, this is the present arrangement. Then choose the state in which the present arrangement is not the final author. Support, capability, resourcefulness, wisdom, openness. These states may lead to action. They often do. But the action that comes from support is different from action born in catastrophe. Fear says, do anything. Support asks, what is wise? Fear says, there is only one chance. Support leaves room for alternatives. Fear says, if this one source fails, all supply fails. Support knows that a channel is not the principle. This is how the state changes your relation to evidence without denying evidence. You become more practical, not less. Panic is not practicality. Catastrophe is not realism. A frightened imagination may call itself realistic simply because its pictures are unpleasant. Do not be deceived by this. A dark prediction is no more factual merely because it hurts. The senses report present conditions. Fear writes sequels. You are not required to read them. Perhaps there has been a delay in something deeply important to you. You expected movement. Movement did not appear. The old mind begins its work. If it has not happened by now, it never will. If there were a way, I would already see it. If things were changing, there would be a sign. This is how impatience becomes prophecy. But delay is a measure of time, not a measure of destiny. Something has not happened yet. That is all the word delay truly contains. It does not tell you what follows. You add that. And because you add it inwardly, you suffer not only the delay, but the imagined conclusion. Then you may begin acting from the conclusion. You abandon the path too early. You speak from discouragement. You accept something unworthy because you assume nothing else is coming. You withdraw from opportunities. You stop listening for ideas. You interpret neutral events through defeat. The prophecy begins to participate in its own fulfillment. This is why the inner state matters. You do not have to say that every delay is secretly preparing something wonderful. You do not know this. There are delays that are simply inconvenient. There are delays that require different action. There are delays after which you choose another road. Do not decorate uncertainty with promises you do not actually believe. Simply refuse the darker excess. A delay is not yet a final denial. That is enough. The mind can rest there. You may say, this has taken longer than I hoped. That is honest. Then stop. Do not add, therefore my whole future is against me. You see how little is required to stop building tomorrow out of today. Often you need not construct a magnificent new story. You need only stop extending the old one. This is a profound use of imagination. People believe imagination must always add. Sometimes imagination becomes creative by refusing to continue a sentence. Today was difficult. Stop. Do not add. Tomorrow will be difficult too. This person disappointed me. Stop. Do not add. People always disappoint me. Money is tight today. Stop. Do not add. I will never be secure. This attempt failed. Stop. Do not add. Nothing works for me. You are interrupting the false continuity between event and identity. One day does not automatically become another. It requires psychological continuation. The calendar advances without your permission, but a state is carried. You carry it through assumption. This is why one can live the same emotional day for years while the dates change. The morning changes, the season changes, the faces may even change, yet the inward sentence remains. I am overlooked. I am unlucky. I am always struggling. People leave. Nothing lasts. I must fight for everything. This sentence travels from year to year more faithfully than any suitcase. Then new circumstances are interpreted so that the sentence survives. A kind person appears, you suspect them. An opportunity appears, you assume it will vanish. Money comes, you prepare emotionally for its disappearance. Peace arrives, you wait for the disturbance. The old state uses new evidence to rebuild the old world. Therefore, tonight, do not merely ask for new evidence. Refuse to employ old evidence as architect. Perhaps you have been saying, when the world gives me better material, I will imagine differently. But if you always require new evidence before selecting a new state, you remain servant to the visible. The outer world says, here is yesterday's material. You answer, then yesterday must continue. And so the house is rebuilt from the same bricks. What would happen if you stopped? Not if you denied the bricks, if you stopped using them as the only possible material. You look at today's silence and say, I will not build rejection from this. You look at today's number and say, I will not build a lifetime of scarcity from this. You look at today's delay and say, I will not build failure from this. You look at today's disagreement and say, I will not build the end of love from this. You look at today's mistake and say, I will not build an identity of failure from this. This is freedom in practice. You are not claiming that nothing happened. You are determining what authority the event receives. The visible world may present testimony. You are still the judge of meaning. And even that image must be used gently. You are not judging the world harshly. You are simply refusing to pronounce a final sentence while the story remains unfinished. I have often said that an assumption, though false at the moment, if persisted in, will harden into fact. But consider also the assumptions you make from evidence. You see one thing and then persist in the conclusion it suggests. This too can harden. You say, because this happened, I am this kind of person. Because they left, I am one who is left. Because I lost money, I am one who loses. Because I failed once, failure belongs to me. Because I was overlooked, I am invisible. The event becomes identity. Identity becomes expectation. Expectation becomes perception. Perception guides action. And another cycle begins. Break the chain at the point of meaning. You do not have to erase the event. You change what you allow it to imply. They left. That happened. It does not mean I am inherently abandoned. Money was lost. That happened. It does not mean scarcity is my permanent state. I was refused. That happened. It does not mean I am fundamentally unwanted. I made a mistake. That happened. It does not mean I am the mistake. The mind may resist these distinctions at first because it has been accustomed to dramatic generalization. Be patient. Truth does not need drama. A fact can remain factual while losing the power to become identity. This is one of the quietest ways a life begins to change. Perhaps tonight you do not feel capable of imagining the perfect tomorrow. That is not necessary. Simply stop building a terrible one from scraps of today. There is mercy in this. You do not need to become a brilliant visionary before sleep. You can simply become unwilling to use pain as prophecy. That is enough to open space. And in that space, another assumption can enter naturally. Tomorrow may contain something I cannot presently see. That is true. The matter is unfinished. That is true. My present evidence does not contain every future event. That is true. I do not have to know the bridge tonight. That is true. These are not extravagant claims. They are humble recognition of the limits of the senses. The eye does not see tomorrow. Why then give it the authority to decide tomorrow? The senses perform a sacred and useful function. They acquaint you with the visible world. They tell you where the chair stands. They tell you whether the room is warm. They tell you whether a letter has arrived. They tell you what is presently in the account. They tell you whether the person is physically present. Honor the senses for what they do. Do not ask them to do what they cannot. They cannot see an assumption before it becomes visible. They cannot see a conversation before it occurs. They cannot see an opportunity before its participants have moved into place. They cannot see the whole bridge of incidents. So when they say, I do not see it, hear the statement accurately. I do not see it. Not, it does not exist as a possibility. Not, it cannot happen. Not, the end is denied. Only, I do not see it. This simple correction restores imagination to its proper place. The visible says, "Not here yet." Imagination need not reply with panic. It can occupy the state independent of appearance. If the end implies peace, let peace exist before the senses report the reason. If it implies being cherished, do not wait for every human gesture before touching that identity. If it implies support, do not make one present figure the final measure of provision. If it implies success, do not let one refusal become an autobiography. This is what it means to live from the end while still walking through the middle. You remain aware of the middle. You simply refuse to let the middle rename the end. The traveler may encounter rain. He does not rename the destination rain. He passes through weather. Your circumstances are often weather. Some weather lasts an hour, some a season, some requires preparation, some changes the route. But weather is not identity. You do not say, "Because I stand in rain, I am rain." Yet psychologically you do this with circumstances. Because I stand in scarcity today, I am scarcity. Because I stand in loneliness tonight, I am one who is unloved. Because I stand in uncertainty, I am lost. Because I stand in delay, I am denied. Separate the traveler from the weather. You are consciousness moving through states and circumstances. The circumstance may be intense, but intensity does not make it eternal. Let the rain be rain. Keep walking inwardly toward the end. There is another danger in using today's evidence to design tomorrow. You begin to demand signs. Once you have assumed the desired state, you look outward to see whether the world has begun cooperating. A person smiles differently. Perhaps this is the sign. A letter is delayed. Perhaps this means it failed. An unexpected expense appears. Perhaps this means my assumption did not work. A pleasant conversation occurs. Perhaps it is working again. Now consciousness is pulled by every movement. 1 hour you believe, the next you despair. You have made the surface of life your instrument panel. Do not live this way. The bridge may contain events you do not understand when they occur. You cannot judge a bridge by standing upon one stone. The stone may look ordinary. It may even appear to turn away from the direction you expected. Only later do you see how it belonged. Therefore, do not convert every event into a spiritual message. Sometimes a letter is simply a letter. A delay is simply a delay. A conversation is one conversation. An expense is one expense. Give life permission to be ordinary. This will help you sleep. You do not need to read the entire universe in every small event. You only need to know your state. The state is the thread. Events need not constantly explain themselves. Imagine sewing a garment. From very near, you may see one stitch moving left, another right, one disappearing beneath the fabric. If you judge the design by one stitch, the whole process would seem confused. Stand back. The pattern is larger than the stitch. Your life is larger than today's incident. The reality you are entering is larger than tonight's evidence. Do not make one stitch the architect of the whole garment. Let the pattern unfold. And if there is something today that has frightened you, look at it once more in imagination without enlarging it. Perhaps it was a sentence someone spoke. Return it to its proper size. One sentence. Perhaps it was a number. Return it to its proper size. One present measure. Perhaps it was silence. Return it to its proper size. An interval without words. Perhaps it was refusal. Return it to its proper size. One answer from one door at one time. Perhaps it was a mistake. Return it to its proper size. One act that can teach, be repaired where possible, and cease to define you. This reduction is not denial, it is accuracy. Fear exaggerates by making the particular universal. Wisdom restores the particular to the particular. One event, one moment, one appearance. Now choose the larger state again. The circumstance may be small enough to fit inside the state. Do not make the state small enough to fit inside the circumstance. If you are supported, one expense can occur within support. If you are cherished, one misunderstanding can occur within love. If you are successful, one failed attempt can occur within fruitful expression. If you are guided, one unexpected turn can occur within guidance. A state large enough to contain ordinary contradiction is a mature state. It does not shatter when one fact looks different. You do not have to rush to repair the world every time it fails to resemble the imaginal end. Let the world move. Hold the deeper relation. This is particularly important tonight, because the mind becomes suggestible as the body approaches sleep. What you carry towards sleep need not be the day's loudest event. The day may have shouted, "Let the night choose another voice." The senses have had many hours to testify. You have seen what you have seen. You have heard what you have heard. You have handled the papers. You have considered the practical matters. Now let the court of appearances close for the night. No more witnesses. No more arguments. No more predictions built from evidence. The day has already made its statement. It does not need to make tomorrow's statement too. You may say inwardly, "I know what today looked like. I do not know all that tomorrow contains." Then rest in the space between those sentences. There is freedom there. I know what today looked like. I do not know all that tomorrow contains. You are not forcing optimism. You are refusing false omniscience. Fear pretends to know. It says, "I know what comes next," but it does not. It remembers. It extrapolates. It repeats. That is not knowing. Let tomorrow recover its innocence. You have burdened it with evidence it did not produce. You have placed yesterday's clothes upon a day that has not yet awakened. Take them off. Tomorrow does not need to wear today's disappointment. Tomorrow does not need to wear today's account. Tomorrow does not need to wear today's silence. Tomorrow does not need to wear today's mistake. Tomorrow will come naked of interpretation until consciousness dresses it. Dress it from the state you choose, not with detailed demands, with identity. I am supported. I am cherished. I am useful. I am guided. I am at peace. These are garments broad enough for many events. Do not insist that tomorrow prove them in the first 5 minutes. Wear them. Let the day meet you. If an old appearance arrives first, do not throw the garment away. The outer world may still contain traces of former assumptions. A letter written yesterday may arrive today. A decision made before your inner change may still be announced. A pattern long practiced may not vanish with one night's rest. You need not panic. No farmer digs up the seed because the old field is still visible at dawn. There is a period in which old evidence and new assumption may appear beside one another. Let them. You are not required to explain every contradiction. Continue choosing the state, and if practical action is required, act. But act as the person you are choosing to be. The supported self may make a telephone call. The cherished self may speak honestly. The successful self may revise a plan. The guided self may turn down a road not previously considered. Living from the end is not sitting motionless while life passes. It is allowing action to arise from another identity. The visible present is information. The state gives the information context. This is why one new state can make old facts lead to new decisions. The facts did not have to vanish first. You changed who interpreted them. And that change may be the beginning of the bridge. Tomorrow is not built only from events arriving at you. It is also built from the self meeting those events. That self can change tonight. So stop asking today's evidence to perform tomorrow's imagination. It has done enough. The room is quiet now. The body is becoming less interested in the day. Let the senses retire from their position as prophets. They are excellent servants. They are poor gods. Thank them for their report. Then close the report. You know what is visible. Now choose what is inwardly possible. Perhaps you do not need a complete picture, only a refusal. I refuse to make today's silence tomorrow's rejection. I refuse to make today's balance tomorrow's identity. I refuse to make today's delay tomorrow's failure. I refuse to make today's difficulty my permanent address. Then a gentler statement. The story is still moving. The bridge is not fully visible. The present is one arrangement. Consciousness can occupy another state. Let this be enough. You are not required to prove tonight what tomorrow will bring. That demand itself is the old habit of control. You are allowed not to know the event. You are allowed to know the state. This is a beautiful distinction. I do not know the event. I know the state I choose. I do not know the route. I know the end from which I wish to live. I do not know the exact words another will speak. I know I will not abandon my own identity before they speak. I do not know every source through which provision may come. I know I refuse to crown one present figure king of my future. This is enough knowledge for sleep, more than enough. The mind that insists upon knowing every event cannot rest. The consciousness that knows its state can. So tonight, let the evidence remain where it belongs, upon the page, in the conversation, in the afternoon, in the room where it occurred, in the day that has ended. Do not carry it into the workshop of imagination and ask it to design another morning. Give imagination new material, not fantasy for fantasy's sake. Identity, completion, possibility. The sense that today is not the only pattern available. The visible world has shown you one frame. Do not mistake the frame for the whole motion. Life continues beyond the image, and you continue beyond the state from which you viewed it. Tomorrow has not yet spoken. Do not speak defeat in its name. Do not write rejection into its mouth. Do not place scarcity upon its table. Do not tell it which doors must remain closed. Leave something unwritten. Leave room for the bridge. Leave room for another state to meet another arrangement. Tonight, you can do this without effort. You do not need to create 1,000 favorable possibilities. You need only stop declaring the unfavorable one inevitable. That small release opens an enormous door. Perhaps life can be different from what today's evidence suggests. Perhaps the present appearance has said all it is entitled to say. Perhaps the next chapter does not owe allegiance to the last sentence. Let that possibility become quiet within you. You have looked long enough at what has already appeared. Now close your eyes. The senses have given their report. Their report is not prophecy. The present arrangement is visible. The future is not. Do not use the visible present as the architect of the imagined future. Let the state you choose tonight become the deeper design, and let tomorrow arrive without being forced to repeat today. And now you no longer need to follow every sentence I speak. You have followed enough. You have considered enough. You have looked inward enough for one night. The words may begin to lose their edges now. Let them. You do not need to hold each thought in the conscious mind. You do not need to remember the order in which anything was said. You do not need to remain awake in order to make the state true. Tonight's work is complete. There is nothing more that must be solved before you are permitted to sleep. Perhaps some matter remains unfinished in the visible world. Let it remain unfinished for this hour. Perhaps there is still a conversation that has not occurred. Let it wait. Perhaps there is still money to be received, a decision to be made, a door you hope will open, a person whose intentions you do not yet understand. Let all of it remain outside this moment. The event belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. You have spent enough nights allowing events that had not yet happened to enter the room before their time. You have entertained tomorrow in imagination as though it were an anxious visitor arriving before dawn, demanding explanations, rehearsals, precautions. Tonight, tomorrow may wait outside the door, not because tomorrow is dangerous, because tomorrow has its own hour, and this is not that hour. This is the hour of release. The day behind you has already given all the evidence it can give. You have seen what you have seen. You have heard what you have heard. You have received the answer that came, and you have noticed the answer that did not come. You have carried enough of it. Leave the conversation where it occurred. Leave the figure upon the page. Leave another person's expression upon their face. Leave the unopened door where it stands. Leave the unfinished matter unfinished. You do not have to drag any of it beneath the covers with you. The body is in the bed. Let the day remain outside the body. The forehead does not need to continue the argument. The jaw does not need to prepare tomorrow's words. The shoulders do not need to carry the bridge. The hands do not need to hold the means. The chest does not need to protect you from a future that has not arrived. Nothing in tomorrow requires your body to fight tonight. Let that be known without effort. Nothing in tomorrow requires your body to fight tonight. You may rest before the answer. You may rest before the evidence. You may rest before the bridge becomes visible. Rest is not something the world grants you after everything has obeyed your preference. Rest can belong to the state now, and perhaps that is the simplest assumption remaining. I am allowed to rest before I see. I am allowed to sleep before I know. I am allowed to be inwardly settled while the outer arrangement continues. You are not abandoning your desire. You are abandoning the belief that vigilance gives life to your desire. What is accepted does not require your vigilance. A seed does not ask the gardener to remain awake beside the earth. A road does not disappear because the traveler closes his eyes for the night. A house remains a house while its owner sleeps, and a state accepted in consciousness does not require you to stare at it until morning. What is accepted does not require your vigilance. Let the desire rest too. You have carried it long enough as something fragile. Perhaps you believed you had to think about it constantly, or it would be lost. Perhaps you feared that one doubtful thought could undo everything. Perhaps you imagined that sleep itself might cause you to lose control. No, you are not holding creation together by mental effort. Release the grip. You do not need a perfect final thought. You do not need the perfect feeling. You do not need to cross some invisible threshold at exactly the right moment before sleep. You have chosen direction, and you do not need perfect continuity. You need remembered direction. If thought wanders, let it wander. If an old concern appears, let it pass. If a memory rises, it is a memory. If fear speaks once more, it is a voice, not a decree. A visitor is not the owner of the house. You know the house you are choosing now. Perhaps its name is peace, perhaps support, perhaps being cherished, perhaps freedom, perhaps simply the quiet certainty that the present appearance does not possess the whole future. You do not have to name it anymore. The words have served their purpose. Let the state exist beneath words. There was a time tonight when you were looking toward what you wanted. Then you began to understand that what you truly desired was a state. Then you saw how often you had entered unwanted states before tomorrow arrived. Then you began to separate the event from the identity. You began to see that one silence was not all love. One number was not all supply. One road was not all guidance. One result was not all success. One moment was not all life. And now there is nothing left to prove. Do not ask only what you wish to have. Ask who naturally has it. You have asked. Now stop asking. You do not need to stand before the question all night. Let the answer become being. The one who is cherished sleeps differently from the one waiting to be chosen. The one who is supported sleeps differently from the one standing guard over every possible source. The one who is guided does not need to see every turn from bed. The one who belongs does not spend the entire night asking whether the door will remain open. So let sleep itself become part of the assumption, not performance, not technique, consequence. If the state is yours inwardly, rest is natural, then rest. The old reality does not need to be destroyed before morning. Do not fight it. I do not fight the old state. I withdraw my residence from it. Let the old reality stand for a while if it must. An old house may remain upon the street after you have moved. You do not need to burn it down. You simply no longer return there each night to sleep. The old state may still contain furniture, memories, predictions, conversations you have repeated too often, a chair where you waited, a window from which you watched for signs, a table upon which you counted what was missing. Leave it. No anger, no ceremony. I do not fight the old state. I withdraw my residence from it. Perhaps the door closes quietly behind you. Perhaps there is no sound at all. You do not have to look back. There is nothing to win in the old room. You have already taken what you needed from it. Wisdom, discernment, experience. Leave the rest. Leave the sentence that said the future must resemble the past. Leave the habit of expecting the old pain because it is familiar. Leave the identity that waited for the visible world to grant permission. You do not need to carry the old self into mourning. Leave that garment beside the bed. Perhaps you wore it for years, the garment of the one who always worries first, the garment of the one who must chase, the garment of the one who expects to be overlooked, the garment of the one who believes support must come through one narrow opening, the garment of the one who thinks peace can begin only when every problem is finished. Place it down. You are still here without it. You are not the garment. You are the one who wore it. And what has been worn can be removed. No struggle, no destruction. only a quiet choice not to put it on again tonight. Tomorrow morning, perhaps habit will reach for it. If so, remember, you do not need perfect continuity. You need remembered direction. You can choose again. There is no punishment for wandering. There is only return. But tonight you do not need to practice tomorrow's return. Tomorrow will have enough grace for tomorrow. Tonight is simpler. The state is selected. The bridge remains free. Let that distinction deepen. The state is selected. The bridge remains free. You do not need to decide who will call. You do not need to decide which person will change. You do not need to decide exactly where the money will come from. You do not need to decide which conversation becomes decisive. You do not need to decide which apparently ordinary event becomes the turning point. The state is selected. The bridge remains free. This freedom is part of your rest. You have not asked life to follow a narrow script. You have chosen the destination inwardly. The road may appear in its own sequence, perhaps through something so ordinary that you do not notice its importance at first. A sentence overheard, a letter, a remembered name, a changed appointment, an introduction, a new thought while walking, a refusal that redirects you, a conversation that begins casually, an opportunity that appears too small to resemble the great answer you expected. Do not inspect each event tomorrow asking, "Is this the bridge?" That would make you the bridge's supervisor. You are the traveler. Cross the next stone when it appears. Nothing more is required. And if there is no visible stone in the morning, do not declare the river impossible. You do not know what is moving beyond sight. The unseen need not announce itself in order to be active. Night itself teaches you this. Much happens in darkness. Roots descend without witnesses. The tide turns when many are sleeping. Dawn approaches before the first ray is visible. You do not stand outside commanding the morning to prove that it is coming. You sleep, and morning comes in its hour. Let tomorrow come in the same manner. You do not have to reach tomorrow. Tomorrow will reach you. You do not have to pull morning toward the bed. The hours know how to pass. You do not have to force the road. Let the road appear. You do not have to command every stone to arrange itself beneath your feet. Walk when there is a step to take. Rest while there is nothing to do. This is enough. The reality you wish to meet tomorrow receives its first life in the state you accept tonight. Do not make that statement heavy. It is not a threat. It does not mean one imperfect thought creates disaster. It means that tonight you are free to stop feeding the identity you no longer wish to carry. You can give another state the intimacy of sleep. That is all. The reality you wish to meet tomorrow receives its first life in the state you accept tonight. Perhaps tomorrow reflects it through circumstance. Perhaps first through your own response. Perhaps you wake and the old fear does not have quite the same authority. Do not call this small. A world can begin changing when an old event fails to produce the old identity. The same silence appears, but you no longer become rejected. The same number appears, but you no longer become hopeless. The same uncertainty appears, but you no longer become lost. The old cue gives the old command, and you discover that you do not have to obey. This may be the first visible evidence that another state has become available. Then the sequence continues. Do not rush it. Do not measure it. Do not turn tomorrow into an examination of tonight. Morning is not arriving to grade your imagination. You do not need to wake and immediately look for proof. Do not ask the first face you see whether your state worked. Do not ask the first letter. Do not ask the first number. Do not ask the first hour. Let the day breathe. Let events reveal themselves in their proper size. One event is one event. The state is larger. If the morning begins quietly, let quiet be quiet. If nothing remarkable happens immediately, let ordinary life remain ordinary. The bridge often wears ordinary clothing. You do not need fireworks. Perhaps one thing simply feels easier. Perhaps one thought comes at the right time. Perhaps you feel drawn to do something you had not planned. Perhaps you leave something alone that you once would have chased. Perhaps you say no where fear would have said yes. Perhaps you speak where the old self would have remained silent. Perhaps you wait calmly where the old self would have pursued. Perhaps someone meets this different you differently. Let the day unfold. No inspection, no demand, The new reality does not need to be watched. What is accepted does not require your vigilance. Let your eyes become heavy with that permission. You have done enough watching. You have watched doors, watched people, watched the clock, watched the account, watched your own mind, watched for signs, watched for proof. Enough. Tonight, the watcher may sleep. Nothing valuable is lost because you stop looking. What belongs to you in consciousness does not disappear because the eyes close. Let the eyes close. Let the room become less distinct. Let the boundaries of the body soften into the bed. No need to know whether you are doing this correctly. There is no correct way to become tired. There is no correct way to let go. Sleep comes when control becomes unnecessary. So allow control to become unnecessary. The road does not need your management. The state is selected. The bridge remains free. The event belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Nothing in tomorrow requires your body to fight tonight. What is accepted does not require your vigilance. You do not travel toward the end. You rest from it. This final line may sound strange at first. You do not travel toward the end. You rest from it. If the end were accepted, there would be a point where the effort ended. Enter that point now. You have reached the inner evening after the question was settled. What would you do there? Perhaps exactly this. Lie down. Close your eyes. Allow another day to end. That is living from the end. Not always imagining more. Sometimes no longer needing to imagine. No longer needing to speak. No longer needing to persuade. The silence following acceptance is also part of prayer. Let silence answer now. Perhaps the mind still produces a few sentences. Let them become soft. I am supported. And then perhaps no explanation. I am cherished. No face required. I am guided. No map required. I am at peace. No perfect circumstance required. Perhaps even these words are too much now. Then leave them. Only rest. The bed supports the body without asking whether you deserve support. Let that simple fact become a symbol if you wish. You are being held. You do not need to hold yourself up while lying down. The mattress receives your weight. Let the night receive what you cannot solve. Not forever. For this hour. The unfinished letter. The unanswered question. The fear of money. The concern about another person. The uncertainty around work. Place each one outside the body. Not gone. Not denied. Simply not carried for the next few hours. This is what appears now. It is not what must continue. This is what appears now. The story remains larger. You may sleep before the story is finished. Every reader closes a book before reaching the end when night becomes late enough. He does not believe the remaining pages cease to exist. He places the book down. Tomorrow he reads again. Place today's book down. The page will wait. No sentence needs to be forced tonight. Perhaps the ending is already moving toward you through pages you cannot yet see. You do not need to read them in advance. Let tomorrow keep some mystery. Mystery need not mean danger. The unknown need not be filled with fear. Let it remain open. Tomorrow may contain kindness you did not predict, a road you did not know, a solution you could not have designed, or simply the strength to meet what comes from a more peaceful state. You do not need to know which. Open is enough. The future is open. The state is chosen. The bridge is free. And you are allowed to sleep. You do not have to reach tomorrow. Tomorrow will reach you. You do not have to force the road. Let the road appear. You do not have to carry the old self into morning. Leave that garment beside the bed. Sleep as the one who already belongs to the state desired. Not as one pretending, not as one performing, as one resting. Let the outer world take its proper time. There is no need to hurry it from this bed. Let the bridge remain hidden. There is dignity in allowing some things to remain unseen. Let consciousness rest in the end, not upon the machinery, not upon the question, upon the end. Perhaps there is only peace there. Good. Perhaps there is only the feeling that nothing more is required tonight. Good. Perhaps there is no clear feeling at all, only tiredness. Then let tiredness become the door. You do not need to transform tiredness into something grand. Sleep. The state can be quiet beneath it. Tomorrow may come in its own hour, and when it comes, you will meet it from another place within yourself. Maybe only slightly different at first. That is enough. A different place can produce a different road. A different interpretation can produce a different response. A different response can alter an entire sequence. You do not need to see the sequence now. Let the sequence sleep beyond you. Your work is complete. The old reality may fade without being attacked. The new one does not need to be watched. The old state is no longer being fought. It is simply no longer being given the whole house. There is room now for another inhabitant, the one who can sleep before proof, the one who can trust without supervising, the one who can desire without begging, the one who can choose without forcing, the one who can wake without immediately asking the world for permission to remain in the chosen state. Let that one sleep here. Nothing more to learn. Nothing more to remember. Nothing more to manufacture. The state is chosen. The bridge remains free. The old day is finished. Tomorrow is still beyond the door. The body is here. The breath is here. The bed is here. Rest here. Let the words move farther away now. You no longer need my voice to hold the state for you. The state does not belong to the voice. It belongs to consciousness. And consciousness may now become quiet. The event belongs to tomorrow. The state belongs to now. Tomorrow can wait. Rest now. The state is chosen. The road is free. The old garment is beside the bed. You do not need it tonight. No watching, no forcing, no chasing, no proving. Only rest. The reality you wish to meet tomorrow receives its first life in the state you accept tonight. Accept gently. Then forget the sentence. You do not travel toward the end. You rest from it. Rest. The old reality may fade. The new one does not need to be watched. Let morning come when morning comes. Let the bridge remain hidden. Let the next stone appear when your foot requires it. Let tomorrow reach you. Rest now. Nothing more is required. Sleep. It is done.